Hey everybody, welcome to tonight's show. This is STARJUMP Shipyard. I am STARJUMP Grim. Nice to see you all in chat. See everyone piling in. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. We are going to be doing the part 2 stream of our backlog episode where we go through all the ships on the star system backlog. With me tonight, though, I've got a great guest host, someone who has been close to the StarJump community, very close for quite some time, has helped me on some in-person StarJump events, including Equinox. I also see Bingo Winchester in chat, who has also helped out. So hello, Bingo. But we have Artorius with us tonight. Art, how are you?
I'm doing well, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. For those that may not know you, maybe tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you play Star Citizen, but maybe kind of give everyone a little bit of a primer on why you are here tonight, besides just being a really awesome dude.
Well, as you said, I am a really awesome dude. But you know, I'm just looking to help the community out. I've liked what you've been doing for a long time, been following you for a long time. So when the opportunity came out to help you, not only in the Equinox event, but a few other things here and there, I've been happy to jump in and
Thank you, Brian.
keep pushing it. You know.
Yeah. And obviously, you play Star Citizen. How long have you been playing the game?
Oh gosh, 2016. The whole try to figure out where the hangar thing, how that whole premise worked.
Yeah. Okay.
Decided
so you've been around a bit then. You've been around a bit. Then. Okay. Well, that's good. Hopefully, and I know that right now you're in a pretty large org. You're doing some big org activities. So I think you could be a really interesting person to have on this episode where we're talking about ships of the backlog, and maybe you have some opinions specifically on these ships and how they could play into larger org operations, because you do large org operations in your current org. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yep. So I'm part of the Luna Wolves. We have a lot of members. I couldn't even tell you the total. But playing all sorts of aspects of the game. We do PvE, PvP. We have people that are just space truckers to people like myself who like to go out in capital ships and fight people and cause chaos.
Cool. By the way, Diggable in YouTube chat says Based Grim 07. Hello, Diggable. I hope you're well. I don't know if you'll get any Based Grim tonight. Maybe. It's very possible. It's very possible. It depends on how. You know what? You generally get Based Grim when I've watched other content creators throughout the week and their content has irked me in some way, and then I get kind of based. But I don't think that'll happen tonight. I haven't watched many people. Haven't watched many Star Citizen creators this week. So I see StarJump Ender in chat. Ender, hello. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Bingo Winchester, as I said, and a lot of other people hanging out with us tonight. I see a lot of regulars, so thanks everybody for hanging out tonight. So real quick, everybody, we do not have the question bot running. Again, I tried to get it running and it's not working. I do need to talk to Piggles about it. I'm probably doing something wrong. So apologies about that. Hopefully what we'll do is after I talk with him, we'll get it working for a future episode. Where maybe Piggles can kind of like be watching while we're doing the episode. That would be really cool. So until then, stand by. But you know, the goal is to get it working at some point. As a matter of fact, I'm trying right now just to see if it will work, and it did not respond. So obviously, I am not doing something right. So we'll tap Piggles very soon to get the bot working and all that. It's still in testing and is running on a private Discord of Piggles, so it's a little you know, I don't have a lot of control over why either I'm messing up or it's not working, but we'll figure it out. That being said, though, we're going to be doing a couple things tonight. The first thing I want to talk about is the Apollo giveaway, the Apollo Triage giveaway, courtesy of our good friends at CIG. Thank you, CIG, by the way. I really appreciate it. All the people on the community team. I don't want to name them all because I will forget them, but thank you all in the community team for helping out with this. I do appreciate it. But yes, it's an Apollo Triage with LTI and all the modules, of course. The Gleam link in chat will get you to that giveaway if you haven't already entered. A few ways to enter. So go ahead and get in on that. We will be giving that away. We're going to be drawing a winner in 1 hour. So at 10 p.m. Eastern time, the giveaway will end and we will draw a winner live on stream. So, so stick around. If you've entered it, we've gotten quite a few entries, by the way, and I've been kind of wondering how to do the giveaways. CIG, there's a few rules you have to follow for it, obviously, on CIG sponsored giveaways, but Gleam still seems to be the best way to do it, where both YouTube and Twitch can participate. Maybe there's other ways. I see some creators doing it where it's on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, and you have to leave a comment on that post, and that puts you in it. I don't know what the best way is. I may try a few different ways throughout the rest of the year and other giveaways, but for tonight, we're doing it via Gleam. We've gotten a lot of entries. I think we got like 600 entries, actually, which is amazing. So either way, I'll probably keep using Gleam only because it's a nice organized system that requires email registration and it's easy to use. So get in on that if you can, if you want to. Again, we're only about 52 minutes away from that giveaway. Again, it's for an Apollo Triage, the new medical ship. And with that comes LTI, lifetime insurance. So thank you for the follow, Deputy. Appreciate you. What are we covering tonight? Well, we are going to be covering, let me switch over here, Ships of the Backlog Part 2. Now, if you were watching the other night when I had Execute on as my guest, big shout out to Execute for helping out on that episode. We covered this first row up here, ships, and these were a lot of the concept ships that were either stuff that CIG has talked about recently and or stuff we know that is coming soon. And when I say soon, meaning the next couple of years. So that could be, thank you, Timble, appreciate that. So again, that could be ships that we know are in active production, pre-production, and or CIG has talked about in some Q&As or Bar Citizens or whatever. So we covered ships like the Pioneer, the Ironclads, the Javelin, the Galaxy, the Perseus, the Raylan, and a few more, obviously, going all the way down to the Hull B and Paladin and G12, a few other ships in there. But tonight we are going to be covering ships that are probably much further off. And that is for a variety of reasons. There's several very old concepts in this list, including some ships that just have a lot of complicated game features that will need to mature in Star Citizen before the ship can be tackled. Now, as we go through these, though, when we get to those ships that do have a lot of feature sets that sort of block their ability to come into the game, I think it's important, and in Art, I'm sure we'll reference this a lot as we go through these ships, but there's going to be some of these ships, these old concepts, that are going to get what I call the Pioneer treatment, which means that CIG is going to reconcept them to such a large degree that the ship may look different, may function different, and may tackle the role it's meant to tackle in completely different ways than what the original concept said. I do think the role will stay the same, but I think some of these concept ships could change quite a bit. So as we get to those, we'll call that out. Just keep in mind, some of these are very, very old concepts, okay? Also, big shout out to Art, who is my guest tonight, also acting as kind of show producer for me, handling some back end stuff for me. And I'm giving him the keys to certain things, and he's going to start helping me organize a few other things. So appreciate that, Art. That is a big help. So last but not least, we're going to jump into the backlog because we got a lot of discussion to do. If you have a question, please put it in all capitals, the word question in all capitals and brackets, just so we could see it. We will try to grab it, either me and Art, and paste it in our little DMs here so that we can hit those. Please try to make it questions relevant to the backlog and to ships we're talking about, if you could. Obviously, there's appropriate times to talk about the 600i rework, but tonight that is not that. We're just talking about the backlog. So if you have a question that does play into the ships we're talking about, please do ask it. We will try to grab it, even if we have to backtrack a little bit on it. So, all right. First, we're going to dive into one of our good buddies, StarJump Ender, who's in chat. We're going to jump into one of his favorite vehicles. This is a concept I know a lot of people are excited about. We're going to zoom right in here. There we go. Our first vehicles we're talking about tonight, which is the Ranger series of bikes, the Ranger RC, the Ranger CV, and the Ranger TR. RC being a racing variant, CV being sort of a cargo general purpose variant, and of course the TR being a combat variant. Art, we have heard a little bit from CIG on these vehicles, namely that the primary reason they haven't been tackled is because there is some work to do with driving mechanics / physics, and especially two-wheel driving mechanics and physics. We also know that along with two-wheeled vehicles would require unique animation sets to be made for the characters. So, for example, if you stop moving, you're putting your foot down to hold the bike up, things that we don't currently have to deal with in game. But that being said, I'll send it to you first for this one. What do you think of the Ranger series? Do you feel they'd be an interesting addition to the game? Are you excited for these? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I think my big thing is with these ones is there's not much content for ground vehicles right now.
Yeah.
And the way that the landscape is, I mean, taking any land vehicle out, an Ursa, insert whatever here, you catch that rock just right, it's game over.
Yeah.
So I think these would be really nice to come in actually once we get like the base building and the highway kind of system down.
Mm-hmm.
This would be a really good like scouting transport and stuff like that. But they definitely need to fix some of that collision stuff with the ground and rocks and all that other physics before we really get into them. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of people dying.
Yeah, agreed. By the way, I see Fast Card in chat. Fast Card, it was great meeting you at Quantum, as I said. Hopefully we can do that again sometime. But yes, I totally agree. I mean, I will say this, though. I think over the course of this year, through some of the content driven storyline stuff CIG has brought online, we have seen some of the first, I guess you would say, the first whispers of vehicle specific gameplay that could be coming to the verse. And one of those I was thinking about was, I think it was Stormbreaker, which was the event where when you flew into that area, the electromagnetic storms and stuff could cause your ship to crash, which that did happen to me. I believe me and BMXEO flew in on an Asgard and got knocked out of the sky, or maybe it was just me. But that event really, we ended up using the Atlases to traverse that, but it was definitely a place where ground vehicles could have worked really well too. And between that and some of these larger underground facilities that we're starting to see in distribution centers, you can start to see a situation where they're beneficial. I think CIG needs to exploit it more before there's much usage there. Obviously, if they put these into the game now, I think groups like Atmo and stuff like that would get a lot of great usage out of them, and they'd be great for people who love current ground vehicle gameplay. But ground vehicles, in my opinion, have a fundamental issue, and it affects all ground vehicles actually. And it really came to light when the storm, the Tumbrel Storm came out, and that is that on low gravity planets and moons and stuff like that, ground vehicles are just terrible. And one of the primary reasons that they're terrible is that they have no traction. And it makes sense on low gravity planets and moons. They need some sort of maneuvering thrusters built into these ground vehicles that are constantly thrusting up to force the vehicle down. You know what I mean? That is something
Right.
these things are lacking. And I feel like until we get that, no matter if you're driving a Nova tank or a Tumbrel Ranger, there's this feeling of like ice skating on these planets, and it causes for chaotic, insane driving, even more chaotic and insane crashes. So, for me, what this essentially is it's a driving physics issue that needs to be tackled, and hopefully before CIG gets too far down vehicle, more and more ground vehicles coming out, they'll tackle this the right way. Unfortunately, if it is a downward sort of facing maneuvering thruster, which is sort of acting like a spoiler would, providing that ground traction, that would be a pretty big rework of the ground vehicles. I don't know if that's the route they're going to take, but it's definitely something CIG needs to think about, because right now I don't even want to get in ground vehicles because of the risk to my care, like dying. So I've been injured so many times from ground vehicles and or flipping the ground vehicle, and then I leave it behind on the planet anyway. So again, just a lot of issues with them across the board. One nice thing about the Ranger, though, that I would say that would excite people is much like the Pulse. It could fit in a lot of vehicles, and so when they do come out with it, it's going to be really popular just for that reason alone. So,
Oh, 100% agree.
yeah, we have some questions. I think we have a few questions here. So, Citizen Ninja says, aside from maybe the hull being Raylan, which backlog ships and vehicles do you expect to be teased in this year's sitcom silhouettes? That's a good question. I personally am expecting, if they do a silhouette video, I am expecting the Kraken. I'm expecting the Kraken to be in the silhouette video. Art, do you have a ship you're expecting to be in there or hoping?
Yeah, I think I would have to agree with you on that. That's probably going to be the Kraken.
Yeah.
Maybe an Ironclad.
Yeah,
maybe
and Ironclad was last year, but they could have it in there this year. It would make sense to have it in there again. So that, yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense. Yeah, it's a good question, because a lot of the ships that were shown in last year's silhouette are still sort of, are still sort of like on the silhouette list. When you think of things like the Drake Flappy Bird, whatever that Sea ship is, the Pioneer, the Ironclad, all those are ships that we saw last silhouette video that are still on it. You know what I mean? So
maybe the Legion, the Legionnaire.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I could see that, seeing like that come back on the silhouettes, because it was 2 silhouette videos ago. So I could see that one come back. I think that would get the people really excited. I think that would get people really excited. I see some people saying the Galaxy or the Arastra. It's definitely possible. They're going to need some ground vehicles in there, so possibly the G12. I think that could be. I think that could be a thing. Parker says, hopefully Galaxy. Graham thinks it might get skipped. I personally am still leaning towards the Galaxy being. I don't know if it'll be skipped necessarily, but I don't think it's I think they just may pause on it for a few months. I think they maybe would pick up the Galaxy in like 6 months from now or something. There's just not a big reason why they need for it to go into production right now, but that could be said for many ships. So I'm speculating wildly, by the way, on that. I don't have any inside information. Another question, Artemis TGM says, question, what would you like the Apollo variant to specialize in? Cargo, mining, bounty hunting? Well, we won't spend too much time on this because it's not a backlog ship anymore, but I would say if there was going to be an Apollo variant, I would like it to be a science sort of research ship that is or some sort of ship based more around science, or maybe even science medical, to where it had research crafting machines on board so that you could craft unique med gel canisters, maybe that give you slight buffs for 1 hour durations to your stamina or what have you. I would love a ship that is a little bit more science-based, but still ties into the medical gameplay. Art, what do you think? Any ideas for an Apollo variant?
I think I would like to see maybe a mine layer, something a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
Just something to kind of tweak space combat a little bit would be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that would be kind of cool. I'm trying to see if I have an image. Someone posted an image. Let me grab it here because I do have it. Someone posted an image of an alteration they made to the Apollo, and I thought it was kind of fun. I'm going to bring it up here. I could see an Apollo variant sort of utilizing some unique model stuff like this one here, where maybe the modules are gone, or maybe you have the module on only one side, and then the other side is more for a vehicle and or maybe some research or crafting stations, something like that. I want to credit who gave me this. Bear with me. I want to credit the person who mocked up this image, because I always champion creativity. Who did it? It was Citizen of the Verse. Citizen of the Verse mocked this up, so I'll give him a shout out. I just think it's an interesting kind of idea, and think it could be pretty cool. So yeah, Apollo variant. There you go. What else we got? We got another question here before we move on. Question from Rabbit. Could you see a Ranger medical variant with a sidecar with a stretcher med pod? Ooh, that actually is a good idea. Sort of like a quick reaction Ranger with some sort of sidecar on it for medical purposes. That could be kind of cool. I think that could be kind of cool. Yeah. Maybe it's like a little, even like a modular add-on to the CR variant, going back to, where was it? The CV variant, the cargo variant. That could be kind of cool. I could like that. So, let's keep moving though. Let's keep moving. We got more ships to get to. We're not done yet, everybody. We're just getting started here. Ships of the Backlog Part 2. Got about 35 minutes before the Apollo Triage giveaway. So here we go. Moving on to the next ship we're going to talk about tonight, and it is the Expanse. There we go. The Expanse. Did I not pull up the Expanse? Let me pull that up. But let's go ahead and start talking about this one. Our Expanse, small refinery ship. This would be, I guess would be called the Refinery Starter. It's one of the newer MISC concepts. We do not have onboard ship refinery gameplay in the game yet. What are your thoughts on the Expanse? Do you hope to see it soon? Is this a ship that interests you or in any way? Obviously, it's an entry industrial ship, but thoughts on the Expanse?
I think the first part is like going back to the discussion we kind of had when we first started here, when I was talking about something that CIG may come back in and kind of really redo. We've already seen this once with the Apollo with the drones. I highly suspect that starting Refinery, I don't know if we're necessarily going to get drones with this. I think they might save the drones for something else. And this may be something that we're going to have to, maybe there's some sort of interdocking.
Does this one have drones?
I thought it did. Does it not?
You know what? This one might not have drones.
I may be misquoting then.
It's okay. It's an older concept. So this one is the one. Yeah. So this is the refinery ship. So it has the ability. So it does have tractor beams. And it has the pods on it. The pods can be manipulated off of the Prospector and probably the Fortune as well, and sent to the Expanse, and the Expanse then refines them. So yeah, no drones on this one. No drones.
Okay.
It's easy to mistake that for some of the imagery because it almost does look like drones flying around. So,
I don't know. Then I think part of that is just again that whole, the refinery stuff, not being able to keep that solar refinery. They haven't really brought that over to ships yet, so
yeah,
I think that might be part of it.
I think Lemming, hey Lemming, hope you're doing well, buddy. Says Expanse, no drones on the Expanse. So my thinking on the Expanse is, so here's the funny thing. I've actually been really shocked that the Expanse has not gone into production yet. It was a ship that I thought they would move into production pretty soon, just so they could get ship-based refinery gameplay in. But they did not. By the way, everyone, thank you for all the follows. I really appreciate it. Sweetheart Oxygen, Dayan Pablin, God, I hope I got these names right. Citizen Hobbs and Watcher XP. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thanks for that support. I do have the Javelin flyover turned off at the moment just because, it would be flying over quite a bit. I got to work on some new stuff for the alerts. But anyway, But yeah, I was kind of surprised that it wasn't put into the game sooner. I do think though that it's possibly something we could see in some sort of silhouette video for next year, or maybe at CitizenCon. And the reason I think that is everything we know about crafting, everything we know about base building, and especially crafting, but everything we know about it, it seems to center around two things: materials or resources, and then the amount you refine them. And then based off those two things determines the output, right? What you get out of it. And that is sort of what anchors crafting and base building. So for me, we do have station refinery, so it's not like it's critical we have it. But if remember one of the things CIG said about base building, if you go back to the Pioneer, you go back to the Starlancer build, you go back to some of those other base building ships, what did they say? They said they wanted you to be able to carry enough stuff with you on your first run to be able to get at least a building done, right? Like one building done, possibly two. I think CIG is not going to want us like constantly running back to station refinery. So I think when base building and crafting really kick into high gear, we're going to see this ship come into the game because they're going to want some refinery, on location refinery options for us. That's my thinking. I think we have another question, right? Zeta Udan says, question, do you think they might release the Expanse / Arastra prior to base building 4 to 6 months so they can get the kinks worked out of player controlled refinery or player controlled refining? I don't know what you think. I think yes on the Expanse. I think no on the Arastra. I think the Arastra is still a little bit out. I think the Galaxy and the Arastra, which are still two big RSI ships that need to be tackled, I don't think CIG's tackling them next. I really don't. But what do you think, Art?
Yeah, I think I would agree with what you're saying there on the Expanse. The Arastra, I think they've kind of backtracked a little bit when it comes to starting these different game loops now, where they're kind of more focusing on the starter ships.
Yeah,
and I think that's.
And the Expanse is only
tiptoeing.
It's only 33 meters long. It's a small ship. I mean, it's smaller than like a Zeus or you know, anything. It's smaller than a Cuddy Black. So, yeah. So
I go ahead.
No, I was just going to say. So you're right. To me, this ship falls squarely in like Misk Fortune, Misk Prospector, Drake Vulture. It fits in that like entry level career starter ship. And I do think CIG wants to fill that out. So I guess the short answer would be when CIG wants refinery gameplay to come in, like ship-based refinery gameplay, the Expanse will be coming before the Arastra, in my opinion. Question from Artemis TGM says, backlog. With concept to release ship size increases, do you think the Aegis Vulcan will have a radical size increase given its role / gameplay? Well, we're going to go into that ship next. So let's go ahead and slide on over. Citizen Hobbs just subscribed on YouTube. Citizen Hobbs, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We have pushed over 15,000 on YouTube. And on Twitter today, or X, whatever you want to call it, we just surpassed 4,000 followers, everybody. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. We're going to slide on over to the next ship of our backlog list, the Aegis Vulcan. Let's talk a little bit about this one. This one does have the drones. So this one does have drones. But thoughts on the Vulcan? We'll get to that size increase question there, Artemis. But obviously, the Vulcan is a repair, rearm, refuel ship. It does that via drones. It is a small two-man ship, which is also kind of puts it in that like starter plus size category of career starters. So you operate, obviously, are in a fleet doing like combat gameplay a lot and doing operations. I think you all could see a need for repair, rearm, refuel capabilities out, you know, where you're operating. What's your thoughts on the Vulcan? Do you see this as a ship that would A, grow in size, B, do you see a need for it right now in the verse, that repair, rearm, refuel gameplay? And I guess another point is, how do you feel about it being attached to drones? Because this ship relies solely on drones to be able to do that gameplay.
I mean, so first of all, with the refitting, the rearming, and repairing, can we get that yesterday?
Yeah.
Because the ops that we've ran before, that is a big issue for us. Is how do we refit? How do we repair? How do we, we've looked at things like carrying missiles and stuff on our capital ships to redo fighters and stuff like that. Sometimes that works. A lot of times it doesn't.
Yeah.
So with CIG recently mentioning that they were that they've talked about rearming and repairing and stuff with some of the capital ships and being able to land, that's great. I think it's the step in the right direction. But with the drones and stuff, I think it's definitely going to increase in size a little bit.
Yeah. It's one of those weird ships where I can't remember when the actually, let me look on the transmission page. Does it have a date? I wish they dated these things. It looks like it was 2018. So this ship, from what I've heard from CIG ship designers, now I'm sure this is not across the board, but from what I've heard from ship designers as CIG, is that pretty much from 2018 onward is when they started building or concepting ships to metric. You've heard that a lot from CIG in the past. A ship, we need to grow because it wasn't to metric. From everything I have gathered from the developers I've talked to, anything from 2018 onward was sort of built to metric. So, for example, the Kraken, another ship concepted in 2018, it is to metric. I asked specifically to Gavin Rothery. He confirmed that it was to metric. So if this is a 2018 ship as well, which it seems to be, then let's just speculate it's to metric. Now, the Vulcan is only one of two repair focus ships currently in sort of the concept backlog, and it is the Vulcan, actually, which is on the small scale 2-man, and then the Crucible, which we're going to talk about as well, which I think is like 6 to 10 or something. And the Crucible will definitely grow. I think the Crucible is probably going to grow another 50 meters if I had to guess. I think the Crucible is going to come into about 125 meters, Carrick size. With the Vulcan, I could see it growing. My only argument for why I hope it doesn't grow is that it's at its current scale, which, let's go back to Hangar Link here. Let me add scale to this. At its current scale of 39 meters, so let's say 40 meters, so it's about the size of like a Zeus. Well, actually, no, that's even smaller than a Zeus. But let's just say around that size, right? So medium ship size. By having it that size means you could carry it on a Kraken, right? Or any sort of ship carrier ship like that. And I could see a big benefit there. If you're going out with the fleet, you've got your Idrises, you've got your Perseuses, your Polaris, you're going out for a big fleet operation. You have your Kraken in the back of the pack carrying support ships, Vulcans, stuff like that. I could see that being useful personally. So it's one of those things where you almost hope it doesn't grow too much just for the synergy with other ships potentially. What do you think about the repair gameplay on this one being tied to drones? Any thoughts on that?
I hope it's not super quick. I do, I think that there needs to be, especially when you're repairing things, there definitely needs to be a cost with that, and I think having it being vulnerable, to that whole process, I think would be a good gameplay.
Yeah.
You definitely don't want something where you could just walk out and kick out the drones, and within 30 seconds to a minute you go from all red to and I also don't think that one this size should fully repair a capital class ship. I
Yeah.
think it should only repair it to a certain degree.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. Yeah, I think part of I am surprised we don't have a repair ship that is and I know some people are going to not like this, sorry, but I am surprised we don't have a more accessible repair ship that uses a beam. We all know that salvaging, the little handheld FPS salvaging weapon gun, whatever it is, the multi-tool, that acts in a reverse way too to repair. So we know salvaging is sort of the reverse of repair. I could see a place with a repair starter that uses beams, sort of like, think of like a smaller vulture. And while I know a lot of people don't like beam citizen kind of idea, I think that would make sense for the starter. I would hate. I guess the problem is with the Vulcan is that I kind of hate that the only way it can repair is through drones, because that means now it cannot be put into production, and we won't get that gameplay until drones are done. And we just don't have any sort of metric of time on when repair drones would be ready. We know base building drones are coming, but we don't know when repair drones are coming. So that's a little bit disappointing. I do know we have some questions, so let's get to that. Art, do you want to ask the next question or two?
Okay, so Texas Horny Toad asked,
Great
if
name.
it cost you money to refine at stations, what will it cost to refine in a ship? Will it just be fuel or something else? What do you think?
It's a great question. By the way, everyone, I posted the Patreon links in chat. If you like StarJump's content, like what we do, please go and consider supporting through our Patreon. Really appreciate it. I mean, obviously, there's going to be some benefits to ship-based refinery gameplay. I think, or ship-based refinery stuff. So I think that has to be. I personally would like that to be faster. I think that should be the first and the biggest benefit of doing it on board a ship, is that it's faster. And I think CIG, based off what we've seen with station-based refining, it's not the fastest thing in the world. And I think that was done that way on purpose so that the ships could have a benefit. So I think that, to me, would be the biggest benefit. Obviously, I think there'll be cost benefits. There'll be there may be the ability to fine-tune the maybe the purity of what you're outputting via ship-based refinery, where maybe the station-based stuff doesn't have that sort of nuance to it. I'm not 100% sure, but that's, I think, what I think the benefit of ship-based refining would be. There probably would be a cost benefit. I think that goes without saying, especially, but the thing there is that it's going to be player set costs. Right. So it'll be sort of up to the player. Now, if you're in some far-flung area, the cost may be higher than a station, but that may be a little bit by design, right? For the convenience of not having to fly all the way back. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. I think that I definitely would like to see maybe some of the things that would cost us. Obviously, you're going to pull power and stuff. So I think that you are going to have an engineer on there to kind of regulate or not necessarily just be able to sit in your seat and fly around and just refine things. Like, you're going to have to be monitoring that constantly. Because, depending on how much that refinery, the cost of whatever you're refining at the time, maybe requires different power levels. So maybe if you were refining something like Quantanium or insert option here, some of those newer rocks that they've kicked out, and maybe also, in addition to that, the tiers. So maybe a higher tier item, takes more energy to do. I don't think it would be enough to just keep you from moving, or to kind of just lock you down in a particular area. But I would like to see, some sort of either an energy cost, fuel as well. I think a fuel cost a little bit to burn that would be pretty fair to see.
I mean, in some ways, I look at refining as part of, to me, it is sort of like crafting. And I think when crafting comes into the game, we're actually going to see a bit of an overhaul to refining. and refining is going to get a lot more nuanced with a lot more options. So I see there being benefits that we can't even fully encompass yet because we don't know the full extent of the crafting gameplay loop, what all manipulation you're going to be able to do to that, what all knobs and switches you're going to be able to do to affect what you're refining or what you're crafting. So we'll have to see there, but I do expect that we'll get a refining gameplay update along with crafting because they really are tied with each other. By the way, everybody, thanks for the awesome support tonight. We have 90 viewers on Twitch with no raids either, so that's really awesome. Thank you all. You're all amazing. And we have 143 watching on YouTube, so thank you very, very much. Appreciate that support, everyone. So yes, do we have more questions? Let's maybe rapid fire a few questions because I know we got a few in.
Okay, so we got here's another one for the Expanse. It's from Rabbit. It says, "Could the Expanse hold Quantanium in a stable state, as in it would like stop the timer when it's refining?" What's your thoughts on that?
I sincerely hope so. I sincerely hope there's a benefit to refinery ships in terms of what they hold and being able to maybe stabilize unstable resources. I think that would be really cool. Thoughts on that?
Honestly, I kind of mirror what you have to say on that. Yeah. I do think that it would be really. I think it would need a greater cost.
Yeah.
I think Quantanium is very unstable, so I think you would need a lot of safeguards, maybe a special part to do that. Something to incentivize people to do that than just a base part.
Real quick, everyone. Thank you, Wolf Nagar, D. Virnat 500, and Harold Spark for the follows. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. What's the next question we got?
Okay, this is from our good buddy Bingo Winchester. He says, "Will org stations have refineries?"
Almost without a doubt. Yep. Based off what we've seen, just in last year's base building presentation, we saw mining ground resource extractors via base building. We saw power stations via base building, right? Those are real close to refinery. We know that crafting and manufacturing is both coming to base building. They put a crafting station in that one building in the presentation, and they showed manufacturing hangars. So we know manufacturing and crafting are coming. I think you almost have to have the ability to refine on station. So yes, quick answer to that 100%. What else we got?
Absolutely. So we got one from Razor D. Okay. And the question is, what happens with ships and drones? I'm assuming they mean like what happened between ships and drones and all that other stuff.
Well, I mean, it's actually a good question. We don't totally know where CIG is placing the synergy between drones and their motherships that they operate from. Base building is going to be our first preview to that. You know what I mean? We got a little bit of a peek of that at last CitizenCon. Also with the supply bay, which is something the Pioneer builds with its drones, but the supply bay itself had automated drones that were going out and building the space stations. We saw a little bit of that. We've only really seen these base building drones. So I think so much time has passed since CIG's really talked a lot about drones that I have a feeling maybe some of it's changed, and we'll have to see what that relationship is like. Yeah. Anything from you, Art, on that one, or do we want to move to the next question?
I think we should go ahead and move on here. Manny's got a question. What do you think will happen? What do you think will happen to the refinery on the MISC DUR and the MISC Starfarer, since you're talking about refinery?
I think they're going to get all the refinery gameplay brought into them. Yeah, for sure. I think they're going to whatever comes to the Expanse and to the Arastra ships that have the refinery stuff on board. Pioneer's got a refinery on board. You're going to see those additional game features come into those older ships as well. We already know the Starfarer is due for an update. So yeah, you're going to see all those updates come to those older ships. So don't worry. Grab the next one here from our good friend Bunker Fist. Question: does the built to metric include the use of modules and parts like generators and power plants? I don't know if it means they account for every single module location and module closet. But from what I was told by Gavin, it does account for ship metrics, NPC metrics, and other things like that. I'm not sure if that goes all the way down to like component scoping yet. I'm not 100% sure on that, Bunker. I do think on newer ships it does though. Anything on that, Art, before we hit the next question?
Nope, go ahead.
Okay. Last question here before we move on to the next ship here on the backlog. Says here, this is a question from Hebford. Should the repair be tiers like medic beds? That's a good question.
I think so. I think it would. I definitely think that. You know, I think that you're, like I said, with the Vulcan and stuff being a smaller ship, I do not think that it should be able to get into all of the nitty gritty parts of a capital class ship. I think this would be good for your medium, maybe up to a large class ship. But you know, I don't see a Vulcan alone just tackling an Idris and repairing it back to full status, or let alone a Javelin or anything else.
It could be just a difference of scale though too. So whereas like the Vulcan can repair an Idris, it just will take forever. You know what I mean? Sort of thing.
That too,
to where it's like it's not a good solution to repairing the Idris. It's kind of like a terrible way to do it, but you technically could do it. That's sort of how they've done the med beds. I mean, yes, the tier 2 beds won't heal tier 1 injuries, but the tier 2 beds still can get you up to a certain level. You know what I mean? There's some value there even for someone with a tier 1 injury. So I think there's some benefit to them going that route. The next question real quick, by the way, I'm just going to hit because I can answer this one quickly from Chris Montrose says, question, going back to the Paladin, do you think the interior will change? The steps on the first floor that go down, then up to the bottom cockpit are interesting to me. Without going too far into it, because we did talk a little bit about this yesterday, Chris, or when we did part 1, I will say I do not expect the Paladin interior to change much. It is a really new concept, and I think they sort of spec'd it out how they wanted it to be spec'd out from the beginning. So no, I don't think it'll change much. Old Guy Doom, thank you for the follow. Appreciate you. Everyone, we are 11 minutes away from giving away an Apollo Triage, courtesy of our good friends at Cloud Imperium Games. So stay tuned. We are about, 11 minutes away from giving away that Apollo Triage. Let's move on to our next ship. This one is kind of a ship we're going to talk about in concert with another ship coming right after this. They both tie into the same. Was it right after this? Let's check. Yes, it is. Okay. Spirit E1 and the Genesis Starliner. I know this gameplay is something that a lot of people are excited for. But let's go ahead and talk about it. So the Spirit E1, obviously part of the Crusader Spirit family. Currently, we have the A1 and the C1, a cargo and bombing variant. The E1, though, is the sort of VIP transport version that is going to tie into transport gameplay. So scrolling down here, one of the big differences in the E1 is this upper fuselage area here, which sort of has this open window concept seating area, I think for 6 passengers. If I scroll down, you can see what the interior of that looks like. This will be for transporting players and NPCs. In regards to NPCs, of course, there will be a gameplay loop tied into that will take into a lot of different factors. It'll, I think, probably take into account routes that you take people on. There'll be missions around that where, hey, take these passengers on a tour of Orison. They really want to see a space whale. And then you are going to need to fly, find the space whale, let them see it, get good angles on it, get good distance from it. Make sure their drinks are stocked. You can see the stewardess here kind of manning the drink or food machine over here. Provide good services to your passengers, and then that is going to sort of be the VIP transport gameplay loop. We have not heard a lot about that. We have heard from CIG It was a little bit of an off mention, so I don't think it's necessarily like set in stone. But we did hear from CIG that this is most likely post Star Citizen 1.0. Okay, it's post 1.0. While we're talking about the Spirit, though, and I do want to ask you about it, Art, I want to kind of open the aperture up a little bit and bring in this other ship, which is the Genesis Starliner. I know a lot of you know the Genesis Starliners. A lot of you are very excited for the Genesis Starliner. This is a very old concept going all the way back to June 27th, 2015. Okay, so we're now past a decade waiting for the Genesis Starliner, and we're probably going to be waiting a good while longer. This is almost definitely a post 1.0 ship. This is also a ship that is going to have to go through a pretty massive redesign. Okay, if you do love the look, be very prepared for changes to the look of this. So I'm gonna go right over to you, Art, as someone who does the type of gameplay you do, at least now, which is a lot of like big sort of, I guess you would say, military or militia operations. One, does VIP transport gameplay interest you? And then two, at what scale does it interest you? Does it interest you on the scale of the Spirit E1, where it's a smaller scale, 6 passengers, or does it interest you on the scale of like something like the Genesis Starliner, where you're servicing possibly 40, 50 passengers?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think, does it really interest me? Not a whole lot, except for maybe like a VIP escort kind of thing, which would be kind of fun. Escorting somebody from one system to another. That's, if CIG puts a game loop in where we gotta protect them. We already have this escort mission kind of in its infantile state, but I would like to see it expanded where we're jumping from point A to another system to maybe the gateway and all the way and process it through. So I would like to see that on the scale of it. I honestly think I would prefer the smaller E1 kind of scale of it. I think CAG is kind of dipping their toes in here a little bit with the NPCs, with the whole the change they made in Pyro with the drop ships dropping people off. I hope to see that them, when there changes with the AI, that hopefully soon we'll start to see them stepping onto ships. I think it's a good start. But I definitely agree with you that this is a long, long way off.
Yeah, Wolf Blitzer says in chat, yeah, I think I heard John Crew mention it will be after 1.0. I can't remember if it was John Crew or Richard Tyrer or whatever, because I know Richard was talking a bit about some gameplay loops not represented on the 1.0 chart, and if those are going to be 1.0 targeted features or not. Here's the thing: if Star Citizen's too big of a game, if we're ever going to get to a 1.0 state, not everything is going to get in, right? Not on day one. If I had to pick and choose a few things, and I'm going to go ahead and say, as an advocate for this gameplay loop, I actually really am excited for the VIP transport stuff, or even just passenger transport stuff. It's just a kind of a weird Microsoft flight simulator, train simulator type of gameplay that I could totally get behind when I just want to sort of veg out. So I am excited for it. However, if I was to pick a few gameplay loops that are like, that could come later, passenger transport would probably be one of them. I could even see CIG coming out with a patch that is like post 1.0, a patch that is very focused on like passenger transport, right? It's the passenger transport patch, and it comes with these new ships. It comes with uniform, the ability to have uniforms. It comes with the mix master and the food machines and all that kind of good stuff. It's a big endeavor, though. Endeavor's another ship, but it's a big endeavor, this gameplay loop, and I do agree that it's a long way off, and probably most definitely post 1.0. Here's what I will say, just going back to the Spirit E1 really quickly. I am a fan of the Spirit series of ships. I know Ender is as well. I think his C1 is one of his ships that he kind of doesn't melt, and I've heard this from other people too. I am really excited for the Spirit E1. This is one of those concepts where I was like, even though the gameplay isn't in, I almost wish they had still released it, And that's primarily because it's just a really cool looking ship. And I think people could have done some cool RP with it. People could have made some great machinima with it. It would have been just a fun ship to take out, much like the 890 or like the 600i Torian or something. No, it wouldn't have a lot of usage in game, but I almost wish that they would have released it. Now, again, the benefit there is that by holding the ship back, they can build in from the ground up more, things more polished and fine tuned for the passenger game. So I totally get that. It makes sense why they waited. But I am a little bit remiss that they didn't go ahead and put this one in. Do we have some questions to catch up on?
We do have a few questions that
Okay.
we need to
What do we
catch
got?
up on. So let's see. We got one from H. Bedford. It's talking about the backlog again, of course. You believe the drones will be individual vehicles too, to be used on any ship for repair, fuel manually, or to be used on any ship for fuel, repair, or manually for bases.
Yes and no, because we kind of know a little bit about that. For base building, I don't think so. I think those drones are going to be specifically tied to those ships, specifically because to enter the base building mode, you have to use the console inside the ship that is the base building console, which essentially ties you into the drones to place buildings. So I think those drones are tied to those ships: Pioneer, Starlancer build, CSV-FM, Galaxy, and the hover cart. For other drones, so repair drones, the Nemo drone, which is essentially the ordnance diffusal recovery drone, whatever it's supposed to do, those drones, CIG has stated in the past that can go in any ship capable of taking drones, but that you won't get the maximum gameplay out of them. So, for example, what that means is you could put repair drones from the Vulcan into the Nautilus, and it could launch those drones, but there would be some limitations for those drones' usage that the Vulcan wouldn't have. Same with the Nemo drones. The Nemo drone is currently the drone that the Nautilus carries to sort of recover mines and stuff like that, diffuse mines. You could carry those on a Carrack or a Vulcan, but you wouldn't get all the usage out of them. What's our next question?
We got one from Deron Bolton. It says, is it really too much to ask for CIG to deliver the passenger travel ships without its gameplay? They are just ships with seats. They could add the nav mesh stuff later.
So I don't think it's necessarily that's holding them up. I think it's systems like the Mixmaster, the food prep areas, and then where you store the resources for the Mixmaster, food storage and stuff, because we do know that's going to be part of it. I think there's some thinking they have to put into how cargo and stuff will go on the ship. So just related to the ship specifically. Now there's other stuff that's going to come into passenger gameplay, such as boarding, where you picking passengers, all that. But just focusing on the ship, I think that's the reason why they haven't put them in, is just those parts and pieces that will tie into gameplay that are on the ship. Now they could have just put placeholder stuff in the ships until then, but they didn't. So. Real quick, by the way, before we get to the next question, big shout out to a few people here. Cryo Chicken, Space Marine, Flaming Sword, Michael the Ark, Rattlon, and Space Cowboy. Thank you for those follows. Greatly appreciate it, and appreciate all that support as always. Real quick here, before we move on to talking a little bit, actually, let's finish talking about the Genesis Starliner, and then we'll do the Apollo Triage giveaway. Thoughts on this scale of ship? Now, there's supposed to be a few variants of the Genesis Starliner. I think there was even like a military transport version. There's a VIP transport version. There was a few different, things that went into this concept. Obviously, this is a ship that's going to have to change pretty dramatically to fit a few things. A, to fit the width limitations on hangars, as well as fit the more modern Crusader styling. Any thoughts about the Starliner art? Again, I know this isn't like your preferred gameplay, but is this a ship you followed much or have any interest in?
No, not particularly. I mean, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Again, every ship is not for everybody. And out of all the ships that are sort of what I refer to is like ships that will require massive reconceptings. And of those, I can think of three specifically. The Endeavor, the Crucible, and the Genesis Starliner. The Genesis Starliner is probably the one that I'm most excited to see the reconcepting for, only because I do love a lot of the Crusader ships and how they look. And I would love to see CIG apply that to a larger ship, because the Genesis Starliner, I think, is about 90 meters long. It could grow even. But I would love to see the modern Crusader stylings come over into a ship of this scale and this role. Personally, I hope CIG approaches it much like Boeing does in terms of the manufacturer, where the passenger-facing commercial ship, the Starliner, is allowed to have a little bit of a different look than, say, the Hercules line of ships. If you look at a manufacturer like Boeing makes fighter jets and passenger airlines. You know what I mean? They have a lot of different aesthetics. So I personally would love if they allowed the Starliner to have a little bit of a different vibe. Before we go into any more questions, because I know we got some questions coming in, Pickles is going to be excited about getting this bot working for me, because questions are aplenty. And by the way, everyone, if we miss your question, we're sorry. We may not get to all of them tonight, but we'll keep going. I do want to swing over. It's time to do the triage giveaway. It has ended with a total of 616 total entries.
That's awesome.
How awesome is that? That started on our Backlog 1 episode and has now gone all the way to now. Again, I want to give CIG a big shout out and the community team over there, Ulf, Tyler, Galactica, and Niku, and just everyone on the community team for getting me plugged in and allowing me to do these giveaways to the awesome StarJump community. Again, it's just it's something I really appreciate, because I'm able to give back to you all, and I really love that. So here we go. Oh, Pagla says I need to refresh. Sorry, thank you, Pagla. Let's refresh. 763 entries. Thank you.
That's even better.
That's even better.
I love it.
That's even better. Pagla says, by the way, Gleam will dox the email. Thank you for telling me that, because I haven't done one on stream before. So what we're going to do, so that we don't dox the email, is we're going to pull up this here so that we don't dox the email. We're going to pull up this, right? And I'll pull Gleam off to the side and I'll draw the entry. And we'll do the winner here live. You just won't be able to see it because I don't want to dox anybody. Okay, thank you, Pagla in chat. Really appreciate that. Good looking out. Good looking out. This is what I love about the StarJump community and the people hanging out with us tonight. Everyone's looking out for everyone. Appreciate it. By the way, if there's another better option other than Gleam that's not a fortune, that doesn't dox, I'd be interested in it. So here we go. Going to go ahead and draw the winner here. Stand by, everybody. Let me get to that page. Finished. Apollo Triage giveaway. And let me pick the winner. Drawing a winner now. And the winner is drawing, and you're right. It does dox them. Thank you very much for telling me that, Pagla. The winner is, let's see, what's their name? Let me get their name. Stand by. It is Striker. Striker, I will be contacting you. Congratulations. I don't know if, I think I've seen you in the chat before. So Striker 199, appreciate that. I will send you an email. And we will get you this ship. So congratulations on that. That is amazing. That is awesome. Apollo Triage, courtesy of Cloud Imperium Games. in relation to Alpha 4.3.1 Virtues Descent. I should get these with every patch now, and especially going into CitizenCon, I am anticipating whatever new ships are coming for CitizenCon, we will get one or two of them, hopefully, for giveaways, and we'll do some streams and some content to do that. Again, obviously, we're going to have a lot of CitizenCon coverage and IAE coverage, as we always do. We have the the virtual CitizenCon Direct StarJump watch party we're going to do. Still don't totally know what that's going to be yet, but we're all going to get together and talk and everything, so it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, so we've done that. Appreciate that. Congratulations, Striker199, on winning the Apollo Triage giveaway. Hopefully more of those to come. For those of you longtime StarJump community members, hang around. We're going to be doing a lot of giveaways. Let's get back to it, everybody. Any more questions before we move on? Art, some that we can rapid fire, maybe?
It's not a chicken says, I'm really looking forward to the Ranger and the other wheeled vehicles, but lately it's been all about hover vehicles. Do you think we are still going to get these ground vehicles? And if so, how far out?
I do think we're going to get, the ground vehicles. I think when CIG gets further in some of their, especially bases, like player built bases, whenever they get further in things like the ArcCorp Underground, and they seem to have been putting a big focus on facilities. I think they're kind of opening themselves up to needing to find gameplay for ground vehicles and give them a purpose. So I think they'll be able to dive back into them in a major way. We already know that they want to take another pass on the driving physics, for the last I heard, at least. So I would think that, and here's the thing, we're still getting ground vehicles, you know what I mean? We got the MTC not too long ago. We still have that ballista vehicle that was shown in last year's silhouettes. So they still are planning them. I think that they'll lean into ground vehicles in a bigger way, I think, after they get some gameplay and fix the physics for them, the driving physics. So, what other questions we got?
Let's see what we got here. So, okay, so this is about drones specifically. So utility drones, do you think they should grab stuff, move stuff, FPS, level of repair, salvage, medical? What's your thoughts on drones?
Utility drone. Well, drones, I feel like from what I know, drones seem to be pretty single purpose, right? So we have repair drones. We have the Nemo recovery drone. We have the Shepard drone, which is supposed to recover people for medical. We have the base building drones. Not sure what those are called yet. So to me, the drones all seem to have a single-minded focus, like function focus. I think CIG will continue to go that route. If there is a utility drone that is more general purpose, I would imagine that would be one that's not totally automated. Maybe you control it. And if I had to guess, although there was previous imagery of drones that have little grabby hands, I would imagine it would be a drone with a tractor beam on it. So that drone could go out, grab things, bring it back to the ship. That's essentially what I think a utility drone would be. Art, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that. And yes, thank you for the Raffle Press recommendation. I'll look into it. Go ahead, Art.
I do think that I agree with you. I think the drones are going to specifically be very focused. I don't see them necessarily branching out to like just an all-in-one, because it's going to be one of those ones that it's terrible at everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think everything's going to stay pretty focused. I would be curious to see like an FPS drone though, for like maybe security on bases would be kind of nice to have. Maybe out of like an MTC or some sort of Grey Cat or some other variant. I mean, drone truck.
In space, at the very least, in space, we do know that we're going to have Sentry. Actually, I think they're called drones. We have the Sentry drones that you can drop in space. Now they just float around in 0G and provide that cover, that cover fire. We know the Nautilus is going to be able to deploy those. But ground base, where it like flies through the atmosphere, I don't think we have anything like that. So that could be kind of interesting, something that could like patrol a base.
Yep, you could
Yeah.
set some markers, like a little patrol route around, like, hey, you're gonna almost like what they did with the base building mechanic, that top-down view. Just doing that, but setting it up like almost like a pathing points where it just patrols, and you could set the criteria of what it engages in what order and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think I long thought that we're going to eventually get an Atlas, mech suit that doesn't have a place for someone to sit. It's just going to be an enclosed thing that is going to be, essentially a remote operated or like automatic sort of walking drone that can patrol bases and stuff with guns or whatever. I thought we were going to get that primarily because of the way that the Atlas is like defined as an entity in the game files. The Atlas is like, if I remember correctly, and I could have it wrong here because I talked to VMXEO about this at one point. It's weird. It's like the Atlas is like defined as like a player entity. It's kind of weird, almost as if it could have, AI routines running on it. So again, I'm not sure what CIG plans to do, but that could be kind of cool. What else we got? Question: how do you think they will arrange the cargo grid on the Raylan? We talked a little bit about this last chat, so we won't go too deep into it, but I think that they're going to make those triangular box shapes. I actually think they're going to make those flat. They'll still be triangles, but I think they're going to make them flat and make those the cargo grid itself, so an aesthetic part of the ship. And then those cargo grids, you can put whatever kind of boxes you want on them, including triangular Xeon boxes if you want. But Art, do you have any thoughts on that, on the Raylan? I know you weren't on part one episode.
No, but I agree. I think that the triangles are they're gonna set them up that they kind of form those squares with the SEU boxes, and they'll just kind of stack that same route all the way up and around.
Yeah, I think that's a likely scenario. I mean, we'll see. Again, I still don't see any reason why they can't have triangular boxes. Really, you know what I mean? They absolutely could do that. It would just be yet another type of cargo box. We have oddly shaped cargo boxes, quote unquote, now. The prospector bags are technically cargo boxes in a way. They're just differently shaped in a box. So just something to consider. What's the next question we got? And then we got to move along.
Well, if we're heading down, is the next one, are we looking at like the Crucible? Because I got one for the Crucible.
Yeah, we're looking at the Crucible next.
Let's just go ahead and take this one in right here. Will repair be closer to shipbuilding in a box like the Pioneer, or the design dock on the design dock on site?
That's a great question. I guess I'd hand this to you first. What do you think? What's your thoughts on that?
I would like to see, almost, again, going back to that UI that they showed us with base building.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see that kind of top-down view, just so that we could, in essence, kind of focus on the particular areas that we want to refit or repair.
Yeah.
And kind of, so we could prioritize one thing over another. I would like to see.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think that, and kind of going over the Crucible here, by the way, we have a Shipyard video on the STARJUMP channel on YouTube. You can go watch to give you all of your Crucible information. By the way, ignore the Predator mount sponsorship. I don't think we need to go into that mess, but the Crucible, it is a focused repair ship, everyone, and it has a couple unique features. The first one is it has this scarab that does detach from the ship, as you see here. That is a repair bay. And then within the arms of the Crucible, as you're seeing here, it has supposedly is supposed to have these large repair arms that can come out and repair full-on capital ships. So this technically is the repair ship that's supposed to repair large capital ships like the Idris and Kraken and stuff like that through the use of its arms. Its Scarab Bay, which you see here, is where you park ships in there to be repaired. And that Scarab Bay is supposed to have its own set of repair arms, which will essentially be repair beams. And those beams will then repair a ship, fix up whatever issues it's supposed to have. Now, one thing to note about the Crucible is the original Crucible size, I think it's 90 meters. The original Crucible was built around the original I think Hornet size. The Hornet has grown as the game developed. I think it went through a rebuild or you know a little bit of a remake, and the Crucible the Hornet got bigger, and all those ships of that size got bigger. So I think the Crucible will have to get bigger as well. I think the Crucible is meant to fix small and extra small ships. I don't necessarily, or at least in the Scarab, that's supposed to fit extra small or small. So based off that and based off some back of the napkin math, I estimated that the Crucible is going to need to grow to about 125 meters. So large size for sure. It's already large, but that upper tier large size. So it would put it in about the size category of the Carrack. One thing about the Crucible, though, that again is a little concerning is much like the Pioneer, it relies on a lot of gameplay features we don't have. For one, it does rely on drones. It's supposed to have repair drones. It's got the detachable Scarab, right? Which is essentially a module, but we haven't seen that yet in game. It's got these repair arms that are supposed to be remotely operated. I think those are going to be beam. I think those are going to be sort of the reverse version of the Vulture's lasers. The ship originally was supposed to be able to fly forward or backward. The engines could totally rotate. I don't think that's happening anymore, by the way. And I think that has to do with just how ships, how the flight model and star system works. So it's a ship that I think it's going to get a pretty massive rework. I do see the Scarab honestly turning into something like the Pioneer, where you land your ship in it, it fully encloses it and just repairs it. And while I think that would remove a little bit of the physicality of the ship, it's probably the smart way to go. If this shit's ever going to get done, again, just thinking pragmatically here, if this game is ever going to get done, they may have to take a few of those shortcuts. Thoughts on that, Art?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you that I think it's gonna definitely get a rework.
Yeah.
I am curious your thoughts of, do you think we're going to be able to run multiple Scarab modules at the same time from the Crucible?
And you mean like disconnect from one, reconnect to another, and sort of move them around like that?
Yeah. Well, be able to, say disconnect from one, so you're actively repairing something in that one, and you have another one beside it. You're able to back that up, connect to the other one, move it over a little bit, set it back down,
I think so.
and have it repair something at the same time too, and then being able to monitor both of those from the Crucible itself.
I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to do that. I don't see any gameplay limitation that would exist for that, and for CIG to artificially limit that seems strange. By the way, dumbass in chat, which I just have to say the name. That's a great name. Dumbass in chat says Crucible should be able to craft ships too. I honestly would go so far as to agree with that. I think the Crucible could be updated to be able to manufacture ships inside the Scarab, like small ships or extra small ships. I'd be okay with that. I would totally be okay with that. Again, I don't know if CIG's going to ever, do anything like that, but I think it makes sense for a ship of this scale and to give it a little bit of something. Again, I think the Crucible is definitely one of those ships that's going to get Pioneer level reconcepting. I think it almost has to. But yeah, what's the next question we got?
We've kind of covered this one already about if the Crucible is growing, are we getting a full look at a reconcept? So I think we've already answered that one.
I think we have to.
Here we go. Another one from Vasily here. It says, since all thrusters appear to be rear, could we see some thrusters attached to the forward or to the Scarab itself?
Maybe, but I don't know. Maybe they'll take it that way with command, with command module gameplay feature that we know is coming. They could take that into the Crucible and give the Scarab some level of control via thruster, obviously, but obviously through pilot control. That's a little different than what the question is, but that could be a thing for sure. Hey, Execute. Hope you're well. Yeah, no worries, buddy. We're kind of cruising along here. We're going to kind of start to make up some time here so we don't go too crazy long. But yeah, we're plugging along. We're plugging along. Um, what else we got here? Doomsday RKF says thoughts on ship versus ship boarding and FPS and hostile takeover gameplay, or is it possibly upcoming, possibly with the Legionnaire? Well, they're kind of it's really focused around hacking and boarding. We talked a little bit about this in the part 1 episode from a few days ago, where we talked about the Legionnaire. That's going to be tied primarily to docking and hacking. The actual hostile takeover gameplay will just emerge from that. But yeah, hacking and docking, I think, will be the 2 features that we're waiting on: ship-to-ship docking and hacking. So Space Marine 12 says, question, when do you think we will see the Odyssey and the Legionnaire? I think the Legionnaire could come back on the silhouette thing next year, like you were saying, Art, with their focus on hacking. I could see that coming. And with the Odyssey, I don't know. I think it'll be when they circle back to MISC ships, like in a big way, when there's like a MISC focus, which could be any time. We know they're working on the Starlancer series, still working on the build, so it's possible. It's possible they could circle back to the Odyssey at any time. Thoughts on the Odyssey, Art? Is that a ship you're excited for? One you want to see kind of come back in the fold?
I'd like to see it developed. I'd like to see what players decide to do with the Odyssey, but for me personally, no, not my cup of tea. Not yet. It may come in, and I may absolutely love the thing, and I may sell all of my combat ships. But
yeah. Let's move on to the next ship that we're talking about tonight, everybody, the Anvil Liberator. This is, this ship's kind of funny because it's one that people bring up all the time. There's obviously a lot of people excited for this ship. And then there's the crew of people that are like, why does this ship exist? What are your thoughts on the Liberator being someone that does operations with a large org?
Again, it goes back to what I've said previously when it comes to this kind of stuff, and it's like, why wait? Why are we waiting? This should have been. I honestly think that this should have made it in before the Idris. Just because giving us something to move those fighters across space or vehicles across space is important.
Yeah,
it is difficult right now. Granted, I don't know how much the Liberator would improve that, but having a dedicated carrier would be really nice, especially with as CIG makes these changes with flight mechanics and fuel and everything else. I could really start to see, once something like the Liberator comes out, I could really start to see them kind of tanking some of the fuel on some of the smaller ships to tie them to carriers.
Mm-hmm.
So that we have to kind of, that they can't necessarily jump all over the system. They may have to,
well,
need some help.
We do know that they are working on the repair, rearm, refuel capabilities of ships that can carry other ships. So Polaris, Idris, and stuff. So I do have some thoughts that maybe CIG is going to sort of start to turn back the focus on ship carrying ships, you know what I mean? And maybe we will see the Liberator in an upcoming silhouette video. I think that would be an interesting surprise for everyone. They've been working on ever bigger Anvil ships, obviously, lately. We got the Asgard, we got we're getting the Paladin very soon. So obviously they've been working on interior spaces for Anvil military ships, with the Carrack being a little bit of a caveated military. It is a military ship, but it's used for other purposes too. So with that, with the work being done on like the Paladin stuff, it could be that the Liberator goes into production sooner than we think. I don't know why this image is not loading. I'm not showing anything interesting right now.
It might be a silhouette. We don't know.
It could be a silhouette. Yeah. It could be a silhouette. Let me exit this page because it's not loading. That's okay. But yeah, it's an interesting ship. It's one that, while I'm not the biggest fan of the Liberator, I would love to see it in game because to me, it's one of those ships that people are going to use in really wild, interesting ways. And I would just sort of love to see, you know, what that gameplay looks like. And to some degree, I think we do need to get carrier ships in game because I think we need to see two things. One, we need to see CIG needs to see how players utilize them on more of a day-to-day basis. And then based off that data, like how players are using them, I think they can figure out which features and which type of missions and stuff to like, and how to balance fuel usage and how many refuel and repair rearm facilities are spread throughout systems. There's like a lot of like balancing there that I think CIG is not going to know until these ships are in the verse. You know, the same could be said for something like the Starfarer, right? I almost feel like, at least in Pyro, there's too many places to get fuel, and that
Agreed.
sort of hurt the Starfarer. Where when we were originally hearing about Pyro way back in the day, I thought the idea very much was like, hey, you know, you're not going to have a lot of places to refuel, so you'll want a Starfarer. And I thought Starfarer owners were about to get the biggest boon ever. And then it turns out Pyro has an abundance of places to refuel. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed with Pyro. I love the design, love the planets, I love the style, but yeah, I totally agree with you. There's way too many options for pretty much everything in Pyro, and I would like to see that kind of walked back quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that when we're out here, you know, doing these operations, or you know, I'm moving around the verse with friends and we're doing bounty hunting, it's more beneficial for them to, you know, take off from a smaller capital ship than it is for them, or again, just running around with fighters and someone again having that Starfarer and actually being able to do the role that the ship was designed to do. And being able to actually you know, refuel and make some extra money on the side.
Yeah, for sure. Execute, if you do have any thoughts, feel free to jump in the waiting room, sir. I think Pyro, not to tangent too much, but since we're on this discussion, I think Pyro really was a victim, in a weird way, a victim of server meshing. I think because server meshing just took, you know, the time it took to mature, and I don't want to even fault it for that because it's a hard problem to solve, and they did solve it. But because it was so much time to get server meshing matured, it just allowed the location team to just kind of continue working on Pyro. And it's almost like the fact that they got to work on Pyro so long and so much, they just kept adding to it and adding to it and adding to it to make it richer and richer and richer. And that is great for a system, ultimately. But what they ended up doing was just building in all of these conveniences to Pyro. And they took, in some ways, I feel like they took away a little bit of the risk in Pyro.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mean risk in terms of just like PvP. I mean risk in terms of like
getting stranded
or whatever. I used to think that like, oh man, when you go into Pyro, I remember thinking this. I remember thinking, oh, we'll take the Carrack, and we'll put you know, Ender, someone else will be able to put a ship inside the Carrack's hangar because we'll need the Carrack's fuel to get us through Pyro. And that's just not how it turned out. There's plenty of truck stops and stations, you know, throughout Pyro to refuel, repair, rearm. So I'm gonna drag Execute in. So I just think that like, hey Execute, I just think that Pyro is an amazing system, but I just think of how long it was in development actually kind of took away from what it probably should have been. So.
It's Stanton Light. I mean, that's what it's a light beer version of the Stanton system.
Yeah. Execute, what do you think? Do you think do you think we have too much refueling and services in Pyro as it is now? Do you think it hurt ships like the Starfarer and stuff?
Not really. I think they've kind of tailored it for the current game.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it is meant to be a lot more resource scare. Scarce rather. I don't know. I just get the feeling that like when you go into like a lawless system, there are certain kind of restrictions, and they kind of talk about it a little bit at CitizenCon, where you have the like almost like how the response to the PvP stuff. Like if you're in a high security area, they'll be there in like 5 minutes. A medium is like 15 minutes, and then in a low security, you're basically on your own.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I think when I do think about especially carriers, and I've been thinking a lot about this with the Kraken, I do think of things like it's going to be great for them to get those ships in the game, because we need to see what the purpose is for them, and hopefully it's not all emergent. I do hope that some systems like Nyx, maybe Castra, while having some services, maybe, and this may come in, this may actually come more into play when reputations are more of a real thing, where your reputation could lead to a situation where you are not serviced by some of those stations in Pyro or what have you. Because I agree with what you're saying. I mean, it's tailored for the current game, and I think there's obviously value in that, of course. But it just, I guess right now I'm just sort of seeing what the usage is for ships like the Starfarer, and I think that can apply to any ship that is a service-based ship, like the Crucible, the Vulcan, any of those. You know what I mean?
A lot of the talk about the Starfarer back in the day when it was originally kind of coming out was like in a fleet operation.
Yeah.
So the fleet could continue and just keep moving and not have to stop at every single point along the way. And I still think that that's probably its main benefit. Well, to be honest, they literally have a military variant, a military fuel transporter, just for that's what the Gemini is.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
kind of think about where they're going there, that's what they're going for. Where the Starfarer is just that, but it gives up 2 of the fuel pods essentially to make some fuel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can essentially, stop off at a gas giant and refuel yourself. So it's, saving the cost, saving the hassle. You're just doing it all internally.
Yeah. I mean, with your big kind of fleet operations you guys do, I mean, I imagine at this point, because the gameplay's not there, obviously, but there's no real need to factor in logistics ships in any way. Obviously, there's no repair ships, but I'm imagining there's not Starfarers flying with you and all that other stuff, because there's no need.
No, it's just there's absolutely no need.
Yeah. Actually makes me think of like, I wonder if there will be some sort of like, because they do have this in the actual Navy, like any sort of like rearming ships that carry ordnance and to resupply other ships. It'd be kind of interesting. I don't know exactly where they would go with that. But,
it is worth mentioning that you can clearly see that repair is kind of focused on the smaller combat ships, and I think that's for good reason. It's like put them in harm's way instead of the big things, and I think they will be the most frequently repaired ships. And I think it's quite obvious from how they design the Crucible as an example, but obviously it's going to trickle over to other ships, but that'll be the bread and butter of repair people is those combat ships that are getting in harm's way more often than others.
Yeah. Interesting talk on the Liberator. Again, I think it's a ship that could very possibly be seen in an upcoming silhouette video if CIG still plans on doing that. It's a ship that, I mean, at least on the Anvil, manufacturer line, we know CIG has been doing Anvil interiors with the Paladin and the Asgard and stuff like that. So, I could see that go into the next big ship of the line, something like the Liberator, but we'll have to see. Let's move on to the next ship, though, and then maybe take some questions before we jump too far into it. We're going to talk about the RSI Arastra. This is, interestingly enough, a ship that a lot of people are asking about in this backlog series that we're doing, both on the original episode and this episode. A lot of people are asking about the Arastra. Before we get to that, Art, do we have any questions we can rapid fire?
So I got one from Rabbit. It says, do you think fuel convoys for the different gangs of Pyro would be better than various truck stops?
Do you think fuel convoys for the different gangs of pyro would be better than the truck stops? Fuel convoys, as in, like,
So like the NPCs would kind of run their own fuel convoy, and so
Well-
you would, if you have the rep with them, you could reach out to them and be like, hey, I need fuel, and they'd say, hey, meet us here, versus just going to a station and
well, and essentially what we're talking about there are NPC beacons that are put out offering services, right? As the NPCs flying around, and that could be extrapolated to medical, to where there's NPC medical ships on. I was just watching, I was listening to, I think, Space Tomato earlier today, and they were talking about that very thing where people are going to be more, it will be more apt to not like just backspace. If they know someone's coming, they'll do the wait, whether that's NPC or a player medical person. So I think that just ties into this idea of we need NPC groups out there doing those services, flying around in ships and stuff. And I mean, Execute, you're a longtime backer. I mean, I think that's the plan, right? They want to have NPCs flying around out there powered by StarSim at some point, right?
That is a huge part of it. I keep thinking back to the original Pyro though. Like they kept talking about, and I know we just left the Liberator, but the need for the Liberator.
Yeah.
And back then, a lot of the smaller ships didn't have jump drives; they only had quantum drives.
Right.
And I kind of like thinking about the original question. I think I remember there being talk back in the day that they said they were going to put in extra stations just so ships could use pyro, like little drop off fuel points. So I think it comes back to that scarcity thing we talked about before. But I think the other thing I'm starting to think is now that we've only got 5 systems, I think they've moved away from that.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've kind of realized that, because they've gone back to ships like the 100i and other ships, and they've added jump drives in. These are ships that didn't have jump drives. So I think that concept is, at the very least, changed. But as for gangs coming out to help you, I think there'd be an inherent risk with that.
I wonder if you have rep with them, then you can respond to their service beacons. But if you don't have rep, you're not. They'll just attack you. Obviously, maybe something.
I'd agree with that, because that's exactly what it's like in Stanton. If you have a rep with someone, they're going to come and help you.
Yeah.
They help their own essentially. Yeah. That's pretty common.
Let's move over here and talk about the RSI Arastra. Real quick, we know the Perseus is coming for as the next big RSI ship. We previously got the Polaris. We've also got smaller RSI ships and the Meteor. We got kind of larger RSI ships in terms of the Apollo. However, there is a big question mark if after the Perseus there's going to be another big RSI ship coming. I've heard so much about the Galaxy is definitely coming next from people. I've made it no secret that I'm a little doubtful of that myself, to be quite honest with you. As a matter of fact, if they were going to do another RSI ship, I think it would be the Arastra, funny enough, over the Galaxy. But
for me, I think the Arastra and the Orion are kind of linked in their RSI stylings. And I think if you go into my friend's thing, he's got this thing called Hanglink. If you go there and you bring up the Orion realistically doesn't look like anything else. It almost looks like it's like an old, like you can see there it's got different colored panels and stuff like that. It almost looks a bit junky. It almost looks a bit Drake in a weird way.
Very.
So if you take the stylings of the Arastra and kind of fold that into the look of the Orion, I think that's might be where they're going, or maybe they don't and they just leave it how it is. But I can't think with a ship that old, and I think again, this being a backlog show, you would agree with me, gentlemen, both of you, that most of the ones on the backlog now are those larger, older ones that were out in the initial kind of early days of the game. And a lot has been learned and changed since then. And you can see several ships along the way, like the Starfarer that we mentioned, the Reclaimer, the Endeavour. There's many, many, many ships in that backlog, and ones that we know about that clearly need. You can just look at other ships that have already had the polish treatment and the glow up, so to speak. you know, and I can't not look at the RSI Arastra and go, well, that's pretty industrial.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So that, and that's the same thing with the Orion, and I would almost be willing to bet the first inkling of this look that we're going to see is that RSI salvager, starter salvager that we saw concepts for at the start of the year.
Yeah, that's a
and
great
I think
point.
that I think that might be the start of the test bed for doing it. And yeah, we may see the Arastra before the Orion, but I think we'll probably hear about an Orion rework around that time, because like, again, if they're going to do one, I have to imagine, you guys can agree or disagree with me, but I have to imagine they're going to knock them off together because they're just that style.
I would think so. And Art, I want to get your opinion on the Arastra and maybe hit a few questions. But before I do that, one thing I think that you have to think about with these ships sometimes is you always have to think about it's a gameplay loop. It's a gameplay loop scale issue, right? So, you know, for example, there's mining, but there's scales of mining in the game. And I almost feel like if CIG was to redo this entire project, like if they were starting from, you know, 2011 or 2012 all over again, it would have been much smarter for them to put out concept ships that tied into lower and mid-tier gameplay loops. And it's kind of funny that a lot of these big old ships that are like sort of what you would consider in-game ships were concepted so early back in the project. Obviously, it probably drummed up a lot of excitement, but it's put it in a little bit of a weird position in my opinion.
I think you can answer that very easily. They needed to raise money back in the day.
They needed to raise money, right? So, Art, what is your
bigger
thoughts
ship,
on
bigger number?
Yeah, Art, what's your thoughts on the Arastra? Got any interest in this? Again, I know it's another one of those industrial ships, but what's your thoughts on the Arastra? And then let's hit a few questions from people.
Might helpfully unmute myself. You know, I like it. I like the side of it. Sometimes you got to do that. I like the design. I think it's a very sleek looking ship. I am curious to see how well it'll handle compared to, you know, a couple of the other, you know, ships of its class. I want to see how RSI kind of does it differently. And I don't think we haven't really touched that yet. So we'll give it some time. Maybe you'll catch me in it. Maybe you won't.
What questions do we have? Anything on the Arastra?
Oh, absolutely. Of course, we have questions on the Arastra. So Rabbit asked, does the Arastra have a standard cargo grid, or is it all ore pods?
I think that has a standard cargo grid. I got the page up here, so let's take a look. I'm pretty sure it has a cargo grid though. Cargo grid has 64 internal SCU, so 64 SCU on an internal grid. So yeah, so it has just some generic onboard storage. Yeah. Now external storage, it has 512, but I think that is one of two things. It's either ore pods and or refined material pods. Maybe those are ore pods as well, technically, but
yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So I don't do a lot of mining, so I don't know, but yeah. So yes, it does have that.
We have a second question here from Vasily. It says, how would the Arastra offload refined ore to a hauler? Will the refined ore box, I'm assuming the refined ore be in boxes, or will it be made the same as salvage boxes or preloaded like other miners?
Execute, do you know that?
It's kind of a little bit to be determined. They haven't really kind of stated, kind of like what we've got at the moment. Like if you kind of look at the 3 levels, you got something like a prospector that doesn't do basically any sorting at all. You've then got the mole that sorts it, so you can kind of collect more while you're out and about. And then you've actually got the Arastra itself that refines it. So if it's actually being refined, you're actually turning like process ore back to the thing. You don't ever need to go to a refinery. So it really determines how they want to store that final product, because are they going to allow you to store the refined product in the ore bags, or are they going to make you just put in a normal container? We don't quite know that yet. There are some pictures in the concepts that kind of show the things on the outside, but realistically, to me and you, it doesn't really matter. It does look different, but realistically, to the game, it's just a box.
Right.
You know, so
Let's see some
it's
of those
not going
boxes up
to
here.
functionally change. Yeah, it's not really going to functionally change how much it changes too much. It's just going to be some, you know, the saddle pods can connect to some things where the boxes can't. That's basically going to be it. But you know already, if you've been in the game, you can buy a saddle bad and chuck it on a cargo grid. Yeah.
So yeah, that is the Arastra, everyone. It's obviously a mining focused ship. I think it has multiple mining lasers, and it has one mining laser that's kind of unique that can traverse from the top of the ship to the bottom of the ship. Kind of strange to me feature, but I guess it could be useful. And it has an onboard refinery on it and some other features like that. It does have the ability to have some rocks and rock DSs stored in it, so some ground vehicle operations can be launched from there. I think it's supposed to be your sort of home away from home mining ship. I think what could have really pushed this ship over the edge, though, in that level of usageness, if it had the ability to carry something like a prospector, but it doesn't. And it fits in about that 125 meter category. Again, I personally don't think CIG is moving into another big RSI ship after the Perseus. I'm sure that they'll do the exact opposite now, so we'll see. But that is the RSI Arastra. If you're excited for that one, you know,
just real briefly. I think you should point out the thing about creatives here, because I think that leads a lot of credence. Like, knowing that they're creative people get sick of doing the same shit again and again.
Yeah.
And I know you have that background because of
the
movie industry. So just a little tidbit, if you would be so kind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, artists get fatigued, and you know, being creative is a muscle. And if you're doing the same thing every day, you can sort of like atrophy a little bit, and you really need to kind of be challenged as an artist. So absolutely would CIG possibly pivot to something different just to keep their art. And they've said as much. I mean, it was just recently said in a Ship Showdown Q&A, what's the next manufacturer to be focused on after RSI? And John, you know, sort of changed that discussion and said that, well, we're not really doing that. We're not really tackling it by manufacturer family anymore. Yes, we're tackling a bunch of RSI ships at the moment, but and you can see it. They're doing ambush ships right now. They're doing MISC ships. They're doing Consolidated Island ships, Drake ships. So there's a mix.
When we sit down with Ben and John, we kind of asked them, like, why did you pick the Polaris first? And they just said, well, we had to pick one. So they do ride by the seat of their pants a little bit and just do what they feel like.
Yeah.
And John's not like John might be the boss, but he's not a dictator. He actually you have to listen to your people. And I think you were in a similar situation to him, don't you, Grim? Like, if your people are not happy, they revolt.
Sure.
So to speak, and they'll go elsewhere. So you got to keep your people happy.
Absolutely.
Lemming sent me a picture that said the cargo pods are on the side of the Arastra. He sent a photo to me, and I think he sent that to you as well.
Yeah, I just had it up. It's this one here. So, you can see those cargo pods there on the looks to be the port side.
So they do turn into cargo, not boxes or whatever.
Yeah. Continuing on for the sake of time, everybody, we're going to talk about one of my favorite ships really quick, the Aegis Nautilus Strategic Mine Layer. This is a ship.
When are we going to see this? Come on, like be realistic. Come on. This is definitely after 1.0, surely.
It's definitely after 1.0, and unfortunately, I think mine gameplay is just a ways out. And here's the thing. I wouldn't have expected it to be that way, because we've seen work on mines happening. CIG has showed us that, but there doesn't seem to be a big push on this ship. Art, you had some thoughts on this one?
First of all, I was just going to say, execute. That's my line. Don't take my line. My line is win. Like now. But no, I think that when it comes to, you know, looking at how things have progressed a little bit with the introduction of the capital class ships that have recently come in, I do think that being able to bring mines in, I mean, if you can imagine holding down like the orbital platforms, or maybe the area above the worm and maelstrom right now.
Yeah.
Being able to mine that area as a denial I mean that's huge.
Yeah.
You can't have people that are dropping icties down to to assault the worm while you're doing it. Had it happen, it sucks.
Well, it also could
just
be
that area.
It also could be a great equalizer going on to what you're talking about. Like a lot of times people now are saying like, oh, fighters have such an upper hand when it comes to some of these larger ships. Not when there's a minefield they have to contend with as well. So again, I think it could be a really interesting sort of joker card to throw into what we know of now as, ship to ship combat.
I think it's after base building though, because it would fall under the defenses category. And I think this ship is ironically a ship that kind of backs up what me and you were saying, Grim, about the Galaxy not coming. They've done the Hammerhead. It would have been very easy to do this ship straight after the Hammerhead.
It would have been, yeah.
But obviously there's a priority thing there as well. So there's a couple of factors you look at. It's not so black and white as in, they said they're doing the RSI, so they're doing all this shit. Like it doesn't work that way. It really is a priority. And like one of the questions we asked John was like, how do you decide what ships you're going to do? And sometimes they get to pick ones like the Polaris, right? But then there's other times where the design team say, all right, we're going to work on salvage this year, make us a salvage ship.
Yeah.
They don't get to they don't get to pick what they do. They just get to maybe they get to pick the manufacturer they're going to make it. Maybe they get to pick the size it's going to be, things like that. They don't get to pick the gameplay. The gameplay is given to them and they kind of have to do what they're
which is why it's really important for everyone in chat. And I take this approach too with everything, especially because we speculate on ships so much. It's really important to remember that if CIG said something last year about a ship, it could change this year. They could, on a whim, decide next month that we want to work on. I doubt it because there's some gameplay feature stuff there with mines and stuff. But technically, they could, on a whim, say, you know what, we're going to work on the Nautilus. You know what I mean?
They could see it. They could see the need for it after base building,
sure,
like we were suggesting. I could see that.
So things change. I mean, I would have never thought, by the way, if you would have gone back to Last Citizen Con, I would have never thought. I would have bet $1,000 on it that the Pioneer was not going into active production.
Oh yeah, it seemed,
you get surprised.
It just seemed way too big, and that's when like you and I have come back to other things like there has to be ships that bridge that divide, or it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
We're talking about a manufacturer. Up until that point, it had 2 physicalized ships, 2, and they were basically both small.
Yeah.
So to go from all the way down that end to literally one of the biggest ships in the entire game, no, there has to be something that connects those. There's just not enough interior in the Nomad. There's definitely not enough in the Mustang.
And by the way, everyone, the ship you are seeing on screen, if you didn't know, is the Aegis Nautilus, and I can confirm. Speaking I can confirm that it has been stated this is the concept mesh you're looking at, not any sort of production work that happened on the ship. It is the concept mesh. But I was really shocked that this ship is not in Squadron 42, to be totally honest with you. But again, I just don't think the need was there. But it would have been neat to see this ship flying with the fleet. So.
It is a rare ship in the fact that it is very defensive. Like almost every other concept ship in the game is aggressive and attacky. This thing is like a spider that sits in a web of mines and sentries. And the other interesting thing about it is the passive nature of it. You can literally go out, deploy all your mines and sentry, and then store the ship somewhere and put that entire crew into another ship, but the mines are still going to be there doing their job. So that is something, if you have a smaller org, it's worth considering, because this ship can essentially do double function, allow you to drop all the guys out of it and put them elsewhere. Yeah.
One, for those of you that are not very familiar with the Nautilus has a couple cool things going for it. Actually, it carries currently listed to carry 3 really interesting things here. So the first one is the Firestorm Kinetic Tephra homing mine. Is essentially a size 5 homing mine. I believe it carried, God, I forgot, 24 of these or something like that. And the idea was, it was stated in the Q&A, is that you would be able to deploy them in these sort of
God, I'd have to count.
You know, like
I remember it as 6. I remember it as 16, but like, it really doesn't matter. It's a high number.
It's a high number, and that could easily be changed throughout production. But regardless, you'd be able to deploy these mines and set their hostility level. So, you know, attacking anyone, attacking hostiles, you'd be able to set that. Another thing it would be able to carry is the sentry mine, which is essentially kind of like a drone, honestly, but it's a little sentry mine that has two, I think, size 2 weapons on it. And then ultimately, the Nemo drone, which deploys out of a different area, the Nemo drone is it stands for Neutralize and Employ Mine Ordnance. So it's essentially a mine diffuser recovery sort of drone. So again, these would all probably be changed, and I could see CIG making new ones. But a really cool ship. Again, I love the look of it. It's one of my favorite looking ships in the entire game. So I do hope CIG puts some focus on it at some point. But yes, that is the Aegis Nautilus. Kind of, it also is.
You were right.
Go ahead.
It was 24. It was 24.
Okay. So it's the Nautilus is kind of like the Perseus and the A2. The Hercules A2, and that it's a really expensive niche ship. So,
I'd agree with that. The crew count's about the same too, 4 to 8. It is also niche in its function.
Yeah.
And then I think it's even niche within that because again it's defensive.
Yeah.
Which is just a real rarity in the game.
Before
when we talk to
go ahead.
When we talked to Ben and John, they literally said there is the possibility of larger mine layers in the future.
Oh, I could I could totally see that, and especially for station warfare and stuff. Before we move off on this one, Art, anything you want to say about the Nautilus, and any other question you want to bring up?
I think it would be a great. I did mute myself again. Gotta stay hydrated, bro. Gotta keep drinking water.
Gotta keep hydrated.
That's right. So, you know, I think it'd be great. I would like to, you know, I see someone in the chat mention possibly, you know, if we had like a Vandal incursion event, having a couple of these out there, you know, laying mines down before the Vandals come in on a certain timer would be awesome to see. You know, get that we hold the line kind of feel with getting everybody together, and then just, you know, watching Vandal ships just blow up before we even get to tackle them is going to be absolutely cinematic.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of tactical options as well, because you can literally make people play into certain areas by putting minefields down and things like that. Make them go where you want them to go, or not go where you want them to go.
I mean, I've even said multiple times that even if, because a lot of people, there's been a lot of consternation around the size 5 mines about what they can destroy and what they can't. Even just being able to use them as your warning net. So you put that minefield up. As soon as you detect one of those mines homing in on something, even if it doesn't destroy that enemy ship, it's alerted you that an enemy ship has entered your area, which is kind of cool. So I see a lot of usage for this ship in the future. I do own one. It is a ship I am eagerly awaiting for. For the sake of time, though, we're going to move right along to the next ship on the list, and it is the fan favorite, the Banu Merchantman. Let's talk a little bit about the Banu Merchantman. The Banu Merchantman is a very large now, capital size at last concepting pass at 239 meters long, if I'm not mistaken. Very large merchant ship that ties into the marketplace gameplay loop, as well as some evergreen features in that it can carry a large amount of cargo, and it has big dual size 8 guns on it and all other kinds of stuff. So it's sort of a large capital that people could also use, I guess, a little bit as a daily driver, because again, it's got the cargo capacity. It's got a lot of other features that, you know, it's got a hangar for a smaller ship and stuff. So it's got a little bit of that kind of like Carrack-esque or Odyssey-esque sort of daily driver stuff to it. The ship does rely on one main gameplay feature, though, that we obviously do not have in the game right now, which is the NPC-driven marketplace gameplay. Don't know when that's coming. Hopefully not too far off. The ship utilizes the Banu design language because it is a Banu alien ship on a scale that we've never seen before in game, of course, because we only have the Banu Defender. We did, yes, see some early work done by the previous art director on the ship team, Paul Jones. They were doing some work. They revealed that work. A lot of people were really excited about the direction the ship was heading. 232 meter length. But there was a lot of work that was done. They kind of got it up to kind of a white box state with maybe 1 or 2 rooms sort of entering gray box. And then the ship stopped production. We had some people who were at CIG, including Paul Jones, leave CIG to pursue other ventures. And that just sort of brought the ship team down to one of its lowest levels and caused them to pause the ship. Now, a lot of people want this ship to go back in production. We don't know when that will happen. We did hear John Crew, the latest update we got. By the way, hello, Griffin Gaming. I think Griffin popped in the chat. Hope you're doing well, buddy. But the last we heard, the Banu Merchantman may go into pre-production sometime on the backside of next year. This obviously is kind of all we know about this ship, so we won't spend a ton of time on it. But Art, Execute, either one of you have any thoughts on it? I guess my only thoughts would be, to me, this ship is similar to the Kraken in that it's not necessarily a ship we need, but it's a conversation starter ship, and it's one of those ships that when it's out in the verse and it's in the game, it's going to attract eyes. It's going to attract people. It gets people excited for this game. And there is some value there in that. Besides the stuff the ship will be able to do, obviously, with its gameplay rules, it's just one of those ships that brings players into this game. I know the Kraken did that for me specifically. So what do you guys think about this ship?
You go first, up.
Well, I'm going to have to say that, I think there's a lot of things that they need to kind of prep for. And it goes back to the same thing you were discussing with the Kraken on the last episode, which was those stalls, the NPC stalls, or even the mechanics behind even player run stalls.
Oh, right. The stores.
Getting those,
right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that's one of the big holdout factors for this. Really before they even kind of get into it any more detailed.
Yeah. And the ship has grown to a whole other level. I mean, I guess I would send this part of the question back over to you, Execute. We've got the Banu Defender. Should we be getting a large Banu ship that's not capital before we see the Merchantman? Or, I mean, them going from Defender size all the way to Merchantman size is definitely something they don't typically do. Mm-hmm. Although I guess they're doing that with Consolidated Outland right now. So
yeah, it's a really weird one though, because the Banu art style is not modular like everything else in the game. They are truly bespoke. They're very organic.
Yeah.
And the lore reason they have behind the Banu is that they have the best of everything, so they don't need a lot of ships.
Yeah.
And currently they only have the Defender and the Merchantman. And
oh, that's interesting. I didn't even know that. Okay.
Yeah, so they take engines off, they've got Zion engines, they've got stuff off the Vandal, they've got stuff off humans. Mm-hmm. So they're like a collector race, right? And they just don't have a lot of ships. I do think the original plan, knowing the Banu Merchantman, was originally meant to be like Connie sized. Mm-hmm. It's now really grown out and it's quite big. I do think in the future we could possibly see maybe one ship in every size. That would make sense to me. If they ever do a Banu expansion, I would expect that's kind of where it would expand out. But I do agree with Art that it really is a part of the room system, the shops. Mm-hmm. And we've seen NPC work on shop NPCs. But I think you also probably need a bit of a marketplace for them to be able to come along and actually buy things from you. But I do think that it's probably after base building where we may see, the maturing of that room system that they use to test both new gameplay, but also it expands out to this. And they had to have some kind of plan for the Banu Merchantman at some point. The fact that they'd even considered working on it, unless just everything is grossly changed. But as well as I do, he said, what would he say, roughly 2027 or late 2026 they'd consider working on it. Yeah. So that would put this maybe end of 2027, 2028 coming out.
And that's assuming that they retain a lot of the work that has been done. It's not they very well could say, you know what, let's take it back through concept phase again, and do a concept pass on it once again. I hope they don't, but that could happen. We don't know. I will say, I want to rapid fire a few questions here before we get too far ahead. Wolf Blitzer says, if you have an Orion, would you still need an Arastra? I would.
No, not in my book, because you can earn down.
Yeah,
You
could earn down.
You could do it if you've got more money than God. Yeah, go nuts, right? Because obviously the Orion can't land on planets. I think the Arastra is probably going to be the most versatile kind of surface miner. Yeah. Right, but there's still underground mining yet to come. This has been confirmed. They removed it from the prospectus, so it sounds like they're gonna have a whole nother skew of underground mining ships. Yeah. And so there will never be a perfect miner. They'll be versatile, and they'll be like, I think the Orion will clearly make more money being 6 times the size. You can go into Hangar Link and chuck them next to each other, and there's only a $75 difference. You got to remember, the Orion is so much bigger. Yes, it only needs 2 more crew members, but earning back down to the Arastra, if you're trying to save the money, rather than buying both ships, I'll just spend extra 75 and get the Orion and the Arastra again. But that's just me.
Yeah, it's going to come a lot down to matters of scale. When you need a lot of ore, you're going to go with the Orion. It's just bigger. But not necessarily easier. Art, any thoughts on that? Do you need both?
It honestly depends on how you're looking to make your money. I mean, if you're really looking on that higher end of, maybe you're in touch with an org that's going to give you a whole bunch of stuff to refine, then it makes sense.
That's a good point, Art. Don't buy Orion, don't buy an Arastra, just find someone else that's got it and be their crew. That's great, Art. You
gotta make money somehow.
It's true. By the way, Ed and Ag, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Real quick here, I'm going to kind of move us along. We still have more ships to do. Hepford says, I'm confused about the hangar. It feels like you can't move cargo to the hangar, right? I would imagine they will put a freight elevator that goes from the cargo room to the hangar room, much like they did with the Polaris. I think that seems to be something CIG is considering for the most part on these bigger ships. So I wouldn't worry about that. Charlie McCallum says, do you think... Go ahead.
It is built for the Defender, though, and the Defender's on a cargo ship.
That's true. That's actually a great point. That's a great point.
You got to have drawbacks somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. Charlie McCallum says, do you think the BMM will use an alien flight model like other Banu ships? That could be interesting. On a capital scale, that probably could be kind of interesting. I don't know what CIG's plan with that is, but we'll have to see. And then our good buddy Fastcar says, how many people do you think the BMM will need to function properly? 8, 12, 16? Well, it's a capital ship on the size of the Idris at this point, at 232 meters or so. So it's a big one. I think to operate the top turret, the bottom turret, engineering needs, pilot, co-pilot, all that kind of stuff. I think you're easily looking at a crew of 8 on the minimum, without a doubt. But ultimately, for me, I think it comes down to where resource management and engineering lands. If that becomes a very hands-on, player-intensive job, you're going to want more of them. If it seems to be something that just sort of falls to the background for the most part, then you might be able to get away with 1 or 2.
I agree. It's listed at 4 to 8. Realistically, if you go back and look at older concepts of the 890 jump, there was a Maul variant. It's very clear to me in our grid that they essentially, the reason this ship grew, because if you think about it, if you've got a flying Maul variant of the 890 jump, but you don't want to change the 890 jump, this has got the perfect name for it, the Merchantman. So they just blew this thing up and essentially turned it into the 890 jump variant. And this would have been, when you go way back, this is back before they really increased the number of ships and all that type of thing.
Yeah. Sandgroper says, should the Defender be reworked slightly to allow it to dock more smoothly to the BMM, almost like a P-52, P-72 to Constellation? I would say no, only because I think CIG, it's clear with what they did with this concept. They're trying to make things a little bit more evergreen. The hangar is the easiest way to go. It could accommodate other ships as well if needed. Yeah, it would have been cool if the Defender had fit into this a little bit more interestingly, but that just doesn't seem to be the way they're going.
The one thing I hope it has, and I've got no background in this at all, and it's something that when we were talking back in the day, they always said there was a link, somehow a utility between the Banu Merchantman and the Defender.
Yeah.
And the one that I came up with that I still like to this day is when you're warping with other ships, you always warp at the speed of your slowest ship.
Yeah.
And what I thought would be really cool is if the Defender could share the warp bubble of the Banu Merchantman. So you could have like maybe two of them warping outside the ship, but they warp at the speed of the Banu Merchantman because they're sharing its bubble. Like they have a special tech that they got from someone else. And I just thought that'd be kind of cool just to differentiate it from other escorty fleet type of things.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's go ahead and move on for the sake of time. I'm going to bring it over to our good friend, the Misk.
All hail, cult of the Endeavor.
The Misk Endeavor.
You better be bowing, Art. You better be bowing.
Art is bowing. I could tell.
I can't talk right now. My face is like an inch from the floor.
Oh shit.
So let's talk about the Endeavor here for a minute. This is a ship you could do an entire show on. We have done shows on the Endeavor. The Misk Endeavor is a capital size monster. I don't want to show that. Is a capital size monster of a ship that has several different focuses going on, from farming to medical to research, science, all that stuff. I have no doubt that additional gameplay features will come to this ship when it's reconcepted, and I do think that will be tied into crafting. I think that will be a major thing with it. But that being said, with what we know about the ship, there are a ton of modules that go with it, by the way, and you'll see those pop up on your screen here in just a second. It's long rumored by pretty much everyone who's ever done content, and CIG has alluded to this themselves, that this will be one of the last ships, quote unquote, ever made for the game. However, I would push back on that, and that's pretty much because it ties into so many gameplay loops. It has so many complexities, but I would push back on that a little bit and just say that it really comes down to how CIG re-envisions the ship. To me, this is a ship that will 100% get a Pioneer level re-concepting. It's one of the oldest concept ships, if I'm not mistaken, right? Execute. It's gonna be massively changed, and I think for those people out there that are literally like, hey, every module that was sold to me needs to be exactly as described. I think they got to do that to some degree because it was sold, but I still think you should prepare yourself for some pretty massive changes to the ship's look, its function, and maybe how all the modules are going to work. Hell, I could even see them combining some of those modules. So anyways, I'm going to hand this one I'm going to hand over to you, Execute. I know you're the Endeavor expert. Thoughts on the Endeavor?
I think I'll start with we obviously asked Ben and John a lot of questions, but this is one of the ones that they knew we were going to ask, and they just laid it out and basically said, you know, it's just got a lot of different gameplays that's got to go into it. You know, everything you stated basically. You know, you look at simple things like, it's one of those ships, like the longer a ship is out, the more it's promised to. So really simply, originally this was meant to hold a Cutlass, and then it was meant to hold two Cutlasses. Now it holds an Apollo, and now the Apollo's grown. So the Apollo's grown. What? You know, so it not only, so it's now gone from a single Cutlass, and it's listed at 240 meters, to an Apollo that is now, what, 65 meters long. So you see where I'm going here. So that, does that mean the ship's increased by 3 times in length? We don't know, right? So you have to look at things like that, and with all the functionality that the ship has, but you know, a lot of thought we put into it. Like, he brought up things like about the modular system, but I think we can clearly see that they are working on the modular system now. So some of the answers we got would drop off. He was saying, like, maybe we'll make it fixed variants. Maybe, you know, he had a lot of if, buts, and maybes, but I think they're definitely leading more into the modular side of it now. And when this ship comes out, I guarantee you, whenever it does release, every module won't be ready for it. You're going to get a certain selection of modules that are ready for the gameplay. Yeah, I would probably agree with that. if they left it all the way to the end, that would actually be a boon for the ship because it is such a big ship. Obviously, there'd be kind of no need for gold pass, and it would have all those bells and whistles. But like this ship does actually do a lot. Like it essentially is science. Like it's just everything in the science is in that. But then it jumps outside science, having agriculture as well, with the drug lab and all that. So it kind of covers two major gameplay structures that we just don't have at all. And again, for essentially locking in the price for $10, you can pick up a Gemini upgrade to an Endeavor. It's $350, but like to think that this ship, I think the last time me and you kind of worked this out, Grim, it was just under a Javelin, but bigger than a Kraken. Minimum it was like 420, I think we worked it out to. Minimum type of thing.
And I would be willing to even go up from that, where before I was like, no, it's got to be smaller than the Javelin. Then CIG stated that will be the largest player. And we know that's not true now. Again, things change, people. So CIG's now confirmed that the battle cruiser's coming. They've confirmed that we're going to be able to build Bengals at our base. So I think now the sky truly is the limit for the Endeavor. They could do whatever they want with it in terms of scale. So
yeah, it definitely dwarfs the whole E though in size. So this is their. So if the whole E is kind of like their, I don't know, smaller capital. I don't know what else to call that. Like the smaller size 6. This is definitely their larger size 6. From MISC, and I don't think we're all going to see S6 ships from every single manufacturer. I think eventually, like of the lifespan of the game, we may see most of them. But it's a need and a it's not a need. How am I trying to word this? It's a want, not a need.
Couple of questions real quick here. A Triage says, did you notice the Vulcan's hollow model has a full interior concept mesh to metrics? Yeah, the Vulcan has had an interior to it for actually quite some time, and the hollow model, I don't know why, they just left the interior in it. So yes, it does have the interior. You can check it out. Fastcar says, when, if the Endeavor is reconcepted, how much change would you be okay? Oops, I lost my window. Stand by. How much reconcepting would you be okay with? Changing the modularity to become variants, not as many modules when finished. Well, I'll let both of you guys answer on that as well if you want. I would say that the stuff that has been sold there, they need to honor that. So those modules will stay, and I do think it'll be a modular ship. So I think that's kind of the entire crux of the ship, is that it's a modular ship. But what I do think is completely up in the air is the look of the ship. I think that could totally change completely, actually. So
I think I first up.
Art, do you have any thoughts on that?
I have some thoughts. We'll see what you guys think of them. But I do think that with the reconcept, I think it's going to be a lot. And I think it's going to grow not only in length, but I think it's going to grow in height a lot too. I think we're going to see a little bit, maybe 2 spindles across, or some sort of variation of. I think it's going to grow a lot vertically, with putting a lot more modules along the top row.
Yeah. Well, if it had 2 rows of modules like vertically, that would open it up a lot more.
Yeah. I think it would definitely. I mean, it would definitely increase your crew requirement.
Do you mean like spindles on a whole, like one of the whole series of ships? So like spindles going up and to the sides?
Right, absolutely.
Right?
Well, that was a part of the original concept. Some of the original concept images of the Endeavor way back in the day did have that going for it.
And we do have anti-gravity stuff, so you can change the way gravity faces and stuff like that. So yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I'll kind of add to what Art said is I don't see them doing more modules because it already has too many. And I think I do think being an older ship, that most people that brought it would have, but there are still new people buying it too, so that probably gets ruled out. But it's got some really weird things where the middle module has to connect to the second module and stuff like that. So it's got some really weird requirements for the ship, in just how it's laid out, because some you can't exactly lay it out exactly how you want every single time. So it's got some weird restrictions. I would like to see it shortened. So doing things like going into the 3D space, like up and down as well as left and right, would make a lot of sense. I think it's just such a big ship, and it does
Yeah.
so much. That's the issue. Yeah, I just don't see them adding to it
I do
because it already does too much.
I do think for those of you that are kind of curious what this ship could look like after a reconcepting pass, I think you really just need to look to the most recent large MISC ships, and that is the Starlancer and the Odyssey. I think what you're going to see is the Endeavor is going to borrow a lot from those two ships, probably especially the Odyssey. But it's going to borrow just a lot from that design language. It's going to take on different aspects of that ship, both interior and exterior. So if you want to know what the Endeavor will look like, being that it's such a big ship, seeing how CIG tackles big ships like the Kraken and stuff like that, where they're making smaller ships to sort of fill that gap and get those assets built up. They're probably going to do the same thing with Consolidated Outland. They're going to take the same route with the Endeavor. The Endeavor is not going to be a completely new everything, especially with such a ship manufacturer like MISC, where they have so many parts and pieces. So it's definitely going to pull heavily from probably the Starlancer, the Odyssey, and a little bit from the Hull series. I wouldn't be surprised. So.
With the restrictions I talked about, I've often thought the simplest way to do it was make it so there's essentially, like if you look at the biopods that were just up there, then you actually have the two larger modules only appear on top, and then you have like an underneath module. But rather than them connecting to other modules, like on the Hope, the hospital module connects to the hangar via a set of stairs. I would actually have it more connect to the central structure of the ship, and you move through the ship to get to said modules. I think that would simplify it, and it would also allow you to use the hangar in for other modules. So it does make it easier for them to not just create, but it also makes it easy for us to use and make use of that modularity. Think up versions that they wouldn't have thought of.
Art, any questions before we move up to the Endeavor?
Oh, we have several questions for the Endeavor.
Let's rapid fire those so that just for the sake of time, let's do some rapid fires.
So Jedi Drifter asked, how many crew do you think would need to sort through 3,000 SU of cargo?
Well, I think if it's on a bigger cargo ship, just the ones working those main tractor beams, which I think on bigger ships like the Hull and Hull D and stuff like that, I think they're going to have 4 tractor beams on some of those bigger ships. Am I right?
Yes.
And then whatever support tractor beam ships you have, like the MPUV and stuff, stacking them on those exterior cargo magazines. So, look, and Execute, you can vouch for this too. During the recent Race for Stanton event, or whatever it was called, the
Resource Drive.
Yeah, Resource Drive, excuse me. People found using certain things like the Atlas and the Raft, they just found quick ways to manipulate the tractor beam to load and offload very, very quickly. Probably faster than CIG even anticipated. So,
So another way to look at this to just change your like the way you are visualizing that, right? So let's take the whole E. It's got 4,608 SCU.
Yep.
Right? That sounds like a lot of boxes. But then all of a sudden I convert them all to 32 SCU cargo containers and it drops to 144.
Yeah. And we could be assured that there's going to be larger cargo boxes. I'm 100% think we're going to get 64 SCU cargo boxes at some point. And when we get those, it even drops that count down more. You know what I mean? So then you get to the point where you're not offloading, 3,000 boxes, of course, which you don't do that now. You're offloading 100 boxes or 50 boxes or 30 boxes. You know what I mean? So
to put this in a way that comes back to people will be able to currently understand, if I take the C2 and I fill it full of 4 SCU cargo containers, that's over 160 containers. Yeah, I think I've done a rough map. It's about 100, almost 170. Yeah. Right. So you can see it's the size of the boxes scales with the size of the ship. So that's a way to kind of visualize it in a different way. I hope that kind of helps people. Yeah. Stop looking at them as single little boxes and remember that there are bigger and smaller boxes. And we know the whole series is literally designed for those bigger boxes because the Raft is no longer that, but the Raft was a sky crane that was designed to move 332 SU cargo containers, and now it's just become another just another cargo ship.
There's also a lot of evidence pointing to even larger cargo boxes in the future. We've seen some of that in the Squadron 42 trailer and those cargo ships. So, Citizen Ninja says, speaking of the Gemini, will the Starfarer get reworked after 1.0? Possibly. I think so. It could even be before 1.0, but it will definitely get reworked.
We've talked about that with them. It's essentially a flying level. They know it's going to change. It's got things like crawling spaces in it. Crawling spaces are not really a thing anymore. They're crouch spaces now because the AI can't. Again, if you think about how when you put a character down that's prone, the AI has to work out where its hands is, where its ankles are, and that's a problem for it. So just to remove that problem, as soon as they crouch, all that is a height difference between standing and crouching. So it's exactly the same. There's no extra metrics there. So they went to crouch rather than crawling.
Yeah. Cruising through some more questions. Fastcard asks, do you think the reconcept of the Endeavor will happen after 1.02? Probably. They want to probably get through those bigger ships like the Odyssey and stuff before taking another pass on this one.
But there's no science in the game. There's no agriculture in the game currently. It's way down the line, mate.
Yeah. Zdozer, hopefully I said that right. Do you think the Endeavor module ship components will be able to dock with each other? Like the modules be able to dock with each other? I doubt it. No, I think they'll have to dock to the main superstructure of the ship. So
I think that's the main thing they'll remove, because again, there are currently things like the hangar that has to dock with the Hope hospital module, and I think if they made it so it just docks with the ship, it makes it more universal.
Yeah.
Why make one module that only works with one other one? Like, it's just make it one module for fuck's sake, you know.
So the next ship, we're going to group two of them together again for the sake of time. The Hull D and the Hull E. The Hull D coming in at 20,000 some odd SCU of cargo, and the Hull E coming in at 98,000 SCU of cargo, which is absolutely insane. These images, by the way, going back to your question, are not accurate. You're going to see much bigger cargo boxes on here than just the 32 SCUs you see. But here's the bigger update to these ships. These ships will get a concept pass. It wouldn't shock me if these ships have already received some sort of concept work. I could be remembering wrong, but I do think I heard at one point that the Hull D and E were going to get a bit of a concept review. That being said, there's not much to say about these ships. They really are only, that I can think of, useful for two primary things. One is very large cargo hauling missions, obviously. And then the other one is these ships obviously would be pretty critical for building space stations, in that they can carry large amount of cargo that can feed the station and get you further down that percentage complete line.
As long as you got the people to cover it.
As long as you got the people to cover it, as long as you got the resources from all your resource gathering to fill it, the ship could be useful there.
Nautilus would be really good at doing that, you know, dropping sentries down and mines. I just realized my math was actually wrong on that last one. I actually thought I had the whole E up, but I actually had the whole C up. So it's actually 3,072 boxes. When they're 32, so it is still a hell of a lot. But again, that's what the whole E is meant to do. But still, that reduces it from 98,304 to 3,072. So it is just a fraction. And
here's the thing: we could get 128 SCU boxes. Hell, we could get 500 SCU boxes for all we know in the future. We'll have to see how CIG deals with that. But in terms of Hull D and E coming into the game, I think we're a ways off from those ships coming in. I could see the Hull D coming in before 1.0 or coming in for 1.0. I think the Hull E is probably a post 1.0 ship. I don't know if you guys would agree with that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think the other part of that is obviously they don't want to render 3,000 boxes on a ship.
Art, any thoughts on that?
I'd have to agree and say that, you know, I definitely think this is a 1.0 kind of stage, especially with, I think once we get into space trucking to a point where you're going to be supplying star systems with stuff, you know, and if there's a shortage in Pyro and you know, wherever we're at, Nix or Stanton or something like that, and they need, you know, a large amount of this stuff. Once we get to that point where you have not only the NPC driven economy, but you also have that player driven economy, you're definitely going to see these things. And I think that's where they're going to be useful.
I know we got some questions. We're going to go to our last ship now. We'll cover it really quickly, and then we'll get to a few questions before we have to end tonight's stream, everybody. The last ship on the backlog is the RSI Orion. We've talked a little bit about this already. It is a rather large ship, I think coming in at 340 some odd meters. This ship, I thought I heard that this ship had got a reconcepting pass internally already. I could be wrong on that. Did you hear that the same?
It doubled in size like back in like 2017 or something. Can you do me a favor and chuck a prospector next to it, just for scale?
Yeah.
Because it's one of the things I like to point out to people. The old prospector versus the old Orion before it grew in size was literally the same size as like one saddlebag on this thing. And so when you kind of see it like that, I think we lose. That's one of the reasons I like Hanglink so much, because it actually allows you to look at the scale of these ships.
Yeah.
Like when you just see them as JPEGs, they almost become 1-to-1, and you can't visualize the scale.
Yeah.
And essentially 4 prospectors is the price of the Orion at the moment.
Yeah. So there you go. There's the side by side.
You look at value, like you put 4 prospectors there, you cannot see the value in them anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it operates on a scale like if you look at those cargo or those spindles there carrying the refined material, I mean, each one of those little boxes, and I imagine they will change obviously in their design, but each one of those boxes is as big as a prospect. So big as the entire ship. So again, this is when I talk about that scale of gameplay. The Orion is playing in a playground much like the Hull E and other very large industrial ships where there's other things that need to come into the game before those scales of gameplay even make sense. That's why it was so shocking and surprising to me that the Pioneer was coming, or that going into active production. And I'm sure the other base building ships are in active production too. I thought CIG would hold off a lot on those. The thing that I think flipped the switch on the Pioneer was space stations specifically, because the only way to test space stations in the future is to get the Pioneer in game, because that's what builds the supply hub. But with the Orion, again, it's just a matter of scale. It doesn't need to necessarily be in the game for 1.0, because we don't need that gameplay feature or that gameplay loop at that scale by 1.0.
From the things I've heard from people at CIG, I think base building is one of the biggest things coming into Star Citizen.
Agreed, yeah.
And I think to think that there isn't other base building ships that we haven't even heard about.
Well,
I think we'd be a bit naive to think that, wouldn't we?
Well, I 100%. I 100% also think the space stations we've seen, kind of big, big sprawling things. I think there's going to be a smaller space station that smaller groups can build. Like when you just play with your small org of like 5 to 10 people, I think there's going to be a smaller space station you can build. I think they're going to call it something different too, like a platform or orbital platform or something that you're going to be able to build with smaller ships.
They'll call it the Star Station.
There you go. Called STARJUMP Station. But yes, I think again, it's whenever you're looking at scale, CIG is trying to build ships that fit into all these different scales, and because of that, the Orion may do stuff that we can't totally picture yet. And I go back to the Pioneer again. The original Pioneer concept was way different than the one we have now. The one we have now has additional features, resource extractors, fabrication hangar and stuff. That sort of stuff not that stuff specifically, but other stuff could come to the Orion that we can't even picture yet, and CIG maybe can't even picture yet. For example, it wouldn't shock me if the Orion gets some area on it that has, a fabrication room or crafting stations or any other thing that brings value to the ship.
I think you gentlemen would generally agree that when they make changes, they make things bigger, because then there's less complaints. So they give you more for your money, not less. In most cases, think of what happened recently with the Apollo. Just the Banu Merchantman, things like that. They've just grown, and then to offset that, obviously the Banu Merchantman like pretty much doubled in size. They just increase the price of it over multiple years until where it is now type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Are any thoughts on the Orion or even just that large capital scale industrial gameplay? I mean, I would think for someone like you who really likes sort of the large scale combat operations, seeing this level of industrial gameplay come in the game could be kind of cool because it could give you all an emergent goal to defend or attack. You know what I mean? Something that's
absolutely.
not purely like mission based or just fighting other ships for the sake of it. These large scale operations sort of give you another reason to bring out the fleet to protect something. Because think about it like this: a Hull E, a Hull D, a Pioneer, an Orion. These are ships that are going to be extremely valuable assets, not just for the ship itself, but for the cargo it's carrying. Right.
Absolutely. I do think too, I would like to see, even for those who are not big fans of the PvE or the PvP side of things, because I've got a few of my friends who are like, absolutely, like they'll participate in PvP, especially if it's one of those aggressive negotiations that they start shooting before we start talking.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to see CIG work on something in concept with these bigger ships like this, and even some degree to some of the smaller ones, maybe not the single seaters, but almost like a if you meet this criteria then kind of option on the back end of coding. And so if you're carrying all the supply or you've been out for so long, then it is possible for you to get ambushed by NPCs of some degree. And then depending on the class of ship, depends on what the pirates or the org or whatever, depending on which system we're in, Vandal, insert option here, is going to respond to that. So then, yes, that does give me an option to, one, I'm going to escort this ship, not specifically just for PvP action, but for the possibility of some PvE action. Would be really nice.
Real quick here, I just give a shout out. First off, I love the names. Big thank you to I can't say it. Big thank you to Obi-Wan Can Blow Me, who just followed 20 minutes ago. Thank you, Obi-Wan. And
I think they're trolling you to try to get. Yeah, they're just trolling you.
I know. And Das Killa, thank you for following as well. Really appreciate all those follows tonight, everyone, and the support. We're going to take a few questions here. We might not be able to get to everyone's question, but we're going to take a few questions here before we wrap out. We've had a great turnout tonight. We gave away that Apollo Triage, courtesy of CIG. I will get to the winner. We got 193 watching on YouTube tonight and 109 watching on Twitch. So it's been a great turnout. People like talking about ships, especially concept ships. This is something that I do wish CIG wasn't always so kind of like towing the line on, which is like when people ask about some of these old ships, they say that line, which is, if it's not on the progress tracker, if you don't hear us talking about it, we're not working on it. It's like, and part of me is always like, I get that, but sometimes these ships that people have owned for a long time, they just want to be reminded that you remember the ship. You know what I mean? So just even briefly talking about it and just giving a little context of it, even if it's not even being thought about internally at CIG, I think would be really cool. Like if CIG ever did a ship show where they just went through the backlog like this, where when they got to ships like the Orion or the Endeavor, they said, yeah, you know, like we've said in the past, this ship's going to heavily get reconcepted, but then just give us a little context, you know, even just a sentence more can feed these people that have been waiting on these ships. So say something like, you know, we're making all these advances with blueprints and crafting and research and stuff. It's really exciting seeing those gameplay features. You can bet that we're going to tie a lot that into future modules with the Endeavor. It's just a sense of acknowledgement. Yeah, exactly, Fastcar. It's just a sense of acknowledgement. And I think CIG would do well to do that, because I think right now the idea is like, we're not working on it, so we can't talk about it. You know what I mean? So that being said, let's get to a few wrap-up questions here. Let's out of here, see here. And again, sorry everyone if we do not get to your question tonight. Next time for sure. Sorry about that. Hudson Hawk says, question, what do you see as the practical uses for the Nautilus? It currently costs $750 and will likely be $900 at release. So at that price, it should offer significant utility. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on that. My thinking is, one, I do think the Nautilus will be able to possibly carry larger mines, just fewer of them. But I also think that we're yet to see how critical minefields can be in this game, especially when we have valuable assets out there like space stations and bases that contain a lot of time, effort, and value. And we need to protect them. You know what I mean? Again, like XQ said, the Nautilus is a defensive platform, and we don't really have that yet. So it's kind of hard to picture the role that will play. Anyone else got anything for that, or should we go to the next question?
Carry on to the next one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Drifter said, how many crew do you think will be we got that one already.
Well, they were asking specifically about the Banu. So we misunderstood. So they were specifically asking about the Banu.
Oh, well,
not.
Okay, well, with the Banu Merchantman, the cargo just fits in a cargo hold. It's lifted up by like an anti-grav elevator at last concepting. So it'll very much just be tractoring it onto this cargo elevator and lifting it up. We know that some of those larger freight elevators can carry what, like 1,192 SEU of cargo. So that's going to be like 3 elevator fills of cargo. It'll take you a little bit for sure, but you're going to be able to do it and load it with an ATLS probably pretty quickly. I mean, it's a big ship. It's going to take a little while to load, but I don't see any issue with the loading operations for that ship. So hopefully I answered that. Edward Muniz said, question, do you think there will ever be an Endeavor-sized salvage ship? Or do you think that salvage has met its, sorry, my thing keeps getting covered up, that's dead end given the small collection capacity? Well, we have the Reclaimer, Execute's favorite ship. The Reclaimer is the capital-ish salvage ship. It's not to say we won't get a large one, but
it's definitely capital now. A lot of the components have been changed to
is
capital.
it all capital now? Okay.
Yep. It's basically on par with Polaris. In terms of components.
And CIG has already said that they know the Reclaimer is due for a pretty major update overhaul. There's a lot of legacy code in there that needs to sort of be ripped out. There's some internals that need to see those sort of be totally reconfigured. And they said it's a pretty big project, so it's not happening anytime soon. I do personally hope that CIG does turn their attention to it though at some point sooner rather than later. And the reason I say that is because and this all happened because myself, STARJUMP Ender, VMXEO, and another person or two, we went out in a Reclaimer one night just on a whim and said, let's just do some group salvage in there. And we had the best time ever doing a group salvage run in the Reclaimer. It was so much fun. It was very collaborative. It felt good. So for me, the Reclaimer was one of my best kind of multi-crew experiences so far in Star Citizen. So I really hope CIG does turn some attention back to the Reclaimer sooner rather than later.
So I got something with that actually. Is part of our org thing is we actually have what we call a Salvage Sunday. Mm-hmm. And so we'll get members of the org to donate their Idrises, to donate their Polarises, to donate all this other stuff at Salvage, so that people can work on learning salvage and stuff. And it's one of our more popular kind of things within our little company.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. That's a great idea, actually. Question from It's White Canary. Do you think they're removing auto loading / unloading eventually, or reworking it as parking and watching boxes vanish or magically appear is a little odd? So essentially asking if they're removing auto loading or loading eventually. No, I think they'll keep it. You're just going to pay a price for it. And I think that price will probably get more expensive in the future.
It'll become physicalized. So you can already see the walls that they showed off at Nick. So they'll have, if you're doing it yourself, it'll just be the tractor beams on your ship or whatever. But if you want their assistance, you'll have to pay for it to get them to help you pull the boxes off your ship. Right. And that's obviously got AI connotations because they're going to have to fly and move the ship and use the tractor beams.
You'll see some drones sort of doing their thing with
that
it.
Too.
Yeah.
Different tech levels will only certain places be able to do it.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Let's do another question here. See, we're just going to take a couple more, everybody. Zoto says, if you need 20 people to man and operate the Orion in an org, isn't it better to get 5 moles or Arastras or 15 prospectors out? So essentially asking that question you were talking about, execute with the crew capacity needed to operate an Orion, is it better just to get more of those smaller ships? I'll let you take that one.
Look, this has been a long debated thing. Most of the stuff that we recommend is based on value. So, the least amount of expenditure as possible to get the most you can for that. Yes, the argument could be made for certain situations, smaller ships would be better, but it really comes down to value. You cannot take a small ship and quickly earn up, but you can definitely take a big ship and earn down. So in a weird turn of phrase, by buying the Orion, you're kind of like buying all the ones underneath it. And it'd be the same thing if you bought an Arastra and get all the ones underneath, but to go from an Arastra to an Orion, it's natural game progression. Anyone will tell you that any type of game you've ever played, gameplay scales, and you have to have the next one up to be able to get to the one above it quicker and quicker. But if you have the one at the top, like say in World of Warcraft, if you're playing a level 60 character, you go back to a level 20 zone, you're just like knocking everything over like it doesn't even exist. It's that same analogy. And you can't not already see it in the game as it is. You can look at things like the Reclaimer and the Vulture, your 12 SCU, just to get to the same cargo as a Reclaimer, for an example, you literally need 16 Vultures to equal the one Reclaimer. Yeah. Yet it's a Vulture is only what's that, like 2.5 times the price, and you get to a Reclaimer. So you need to kind of look at it as a value proposition. Again, if you like said ship, I will never stop you. I'm never telling you not to do something. It's only ever a recommendation, and Agrid will say the same thing. You do whatever you want. I'm just trying to get your money to go further, get you as much gameplay as I possibly can. So generalistically, that's what we're trying to do. We're not telling you what to do. We're just making recommendations. So you do what you want. And again, as long as you're happy with your purchasing decisions, I'm happy. Yeah.
We're going to do one more question here, folks. One more question here. Let's see here. I'm just going to pick a random one because we got a few here. So sorry if we didn't get your question tonight, but the time is ticking. I do have to work tomorrow. Question from Black Eagle says, do you think the Perseus will set a new precedent for ship weapon sound design? It's an interesting question. I will say this. If the Apollo has some of the craziest engine sounds I've ever heard, I think CIG is always trying to up their game when it comes to the audio sides of these ships. I would say that the Perseus weapon sound design is going to be something interesting, because it is a bespoke weapon and it's a pretty large weapon, dual size 8. So I would assume there's going to be some really cool sound design put into it. I don't know if you guys agree. I think based off the little bit we've seen of the Perseus and the fact that CIG's held back a little bit on showing us much more, I think we're going to be in for a really nice surprise with the Perseus. I think much like the Polaris, it's going to be kind of a high watermark of ship work for them. They seem to be doing that on these bigger ships now. So do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that they've talked about in that the sound ISC that they had not too long ago about really kind of venturing out and kind of hitting that cinematic tone. I think we're starting to see that. I think the Apollo was kind of an initial part of that. I think a lot of that back end rework that they need to do is going to just we're going to, our ears are going to explode. I think once that kind of comes in, because that plays into VoIP, that plays into a whole bunch of different sound dynamics. But I would like to be able to be in a ship and it sound different in every ship that I'm in. I'd like a little bit of that kind of special feel when I'm in that kind of ship, that I can be walking through the crew, as a crewman on a Perseus and a Polaris and feel that difference. Would be really nice.
Execute, before we head out, what do you have coming up this week?
I haven't decided.
So
Aaron and I was meant to record yesterday, but he wasn't feeling it, so we delayed it to today. we're gonna have a discussion later today about what we're gonna do. But,
Awesome.
yeah, probably be a ship review or something like that to that nature because we're feeling a bit lazy this week. He's a little under the weather, so I want to go easy on him.
Yeah. Well, you know,
any ships you'd like to see reviewed?
Yeah.
Or re-reviewed?
That's a good question. That is a good question.
All right. Maybe tell me after the show.
Yeah. You know, we're in that period where there's probably going to be a little bit of like quietness from CIG now that we're like on the threshold of CitizenCon. So we might see a little bit of a lull and then just an information dump, obviously in October, which will then play right into IAE, which will be another information dump. So it's about to get busy and a lot of, you know, for content creators, a lot of stuff to talk about and discuss. A lot of stuff for the community to discuss and everything, but you know, for the next week or two here, it could be a little bit of a lull. Everyone,
only about 3 weeks away. Only about 3 weeks away. It's not very long.
Yeah. Everyone, give Artorias a big 007 playing the role of producer, gathering questions, helping me manage myself, keep myself together. We'll be even more buttoned up in future streams as we're starting to get our feet under us. But I do appreciate you, Art. I'm going to send you, we're going to raid a channel here over on Twitch. A lot of the people I was going to raid are now off. So either way, we'll raid Meathead Militia. For the rest of you, please have a good rest of your evening. I've got to get up early for work. I hope you all enjoyed the stream. It's been a great time going through these backlog ships and discussing them. It's always a lot of fun. And by the numbers we had tonight, I think you all enjoy it as well. So thank you very much, everyone. Salute. Have a great rest of your night. Sending you over to Meathead. Take care of yourselves. Talk to you soon.
See you, citizens.